Welcome to the Select Board meeting for Monday, June 12th. We'll call to order at 6:37 p.m. Third read on surplus equipment requests, Recreation Commission, the Zilinski Dugouts.
I have no concerns.
None.
I make a motion we approve the surplus property disposition request for Recreation Commission, removal of wooden dugouts at Zilinski Park. Dugouts are in poor shape and a safety hazard and will be destroyed.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Second read, surplus equipment request, School Department, Tilt Skillet.
No concern.
None.
Did we discuss last time, we were thinking of just maybe municipal bid, see if it's worth anything, and then
Yeah,
If
municipal
not,
bid first
it
and
is
as
what it
is because it was
scrap
left out
otherwise.
and,
Yep,
yeah.
okay. Review of the hazard communications policy draft, third read.
I have no concern.
And I believe from last time, all the tables of substances at every building is new. Because I think
is.
we originally wanted to keep them separate, or not have them as part of the policy, but
Right, and I'm,
site-specific, and I believe after review in the safety committee meeting, it is a requirement to have them listed.
in the policy,
I believe that is correct. We
but
can circle
requirement
back
from
from
who?
OSHA. I believe. We can circle back when Brian's back and confirm that, but I believe that is the detail behind those being in there now. Again, or in more detail even than earlier draft.
So my question is, how often are we going to be updating this policy? Because every time there's a chemical change and something comes up, if it's part of the policy, we don't want it to be out of compliance. Is there regulations on that? And I see a hand up out there that might have an answer to that. But that's my concern, is that if it's, that's why we don't want to put things like that that are finite in the policy.
I know, and which is why we were all like advocating for no. Jackie?
I was at the public safety, public safety meeting. So it is a requirement from OSHA, and we discussed having the policy reviewed once a year by the Public Safety Committee as part of an ongoing, and then that's when we would make all the changes. But Brian might have more details, but that's what we discussed.
That satisfies OSHA?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So are we approving this even though it doesn't have those chemicals actually in there?
I don't think so.
I was
think
going to
this
say,
is,
if we're,
this is our,
This'll be
do we have
fourth
more
and-
questions,
yeah.
more issues with the draft as they finish filling that in? I believe each building or department head has received this coming out of that meeting and our request to get it filled in with the various appropriate items, especially some of the specialty stuff that would be only at certain sites.
just out of curiosity, in section 8, it says that Appendix A is maintained and may be updated from time to time by the health safety officer. Do we have other precedent that we update appendices without review? It's one of the things we'll probably have to bring back and discuss. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. That mitigates the number of times it has to come back to us. You know, that was my concern, is you change one chemical if you want the policy to be updated. But if we can update an appendix, if we can have somebody else, you know, with our
Have we
permission to go ahead and do that.
delegated and then do
The annual.
that as it happens, and then just do the annual review as a group? Is
Yeah,
that what you're
Yes.
thinking?
I just want to make sure that that doesn't
Yeah, I don't-
fly in the face of the way we've done other updates to appendices in other policies. As long as that's uniform.
As long as it's okay to do that outside of reissuing.
That's-
Well, I mean, we probably have to reissue anyway.
Well, that's my concern,
But-
is if we update an is it going to violate an update to a policy that's supposed to be done publicly in an open meeting, but we're saying we can update the appendix at any time?
Or designate, yeah. I would say we haven't designated it in any others. I don't think,
Right.
if we're allowed to, I don't think designating it violates any of the other ones or contradicts them. It's just that we haven't.
Right.
But we can make sure that that's not an issue. I think potentially the only thing would be communicating the change. Has to happen if it's updated, if there's any concern.
And so the only other unknown is we still have not come to a decision on the health safety officer, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so those are the two outstandings.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'm fine with all the other changes. Change the ordering of responsible person so that it made more sense. Made all the changes that match what we had discussed at the last review.
Okay, we'll get clarity on, we can circle back later, just in case Brian has some of those answers with him, but otherwise we'll bring it for a read on the 26th.
Do you want it on the 26th?
Assuming we have all of the
I was going to say,
items in order.
if the tables aren't
If the
populated.
tables aren't done, we won't bring
Yeah.
it back, yep.
Okay, fair enough.
Like the camera policy is not on here, because we're going to wait for updates before we bring it back.
Right.
Till we have those. Other questions or things on the HASCOM policy?
No, sir.
Review of meeting minutes, May 22nd, 2023.
Make a motion, we accept the meeting minutes, May 22nd, 2023 as written.
Second,
Any discussion?
None.
none.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
June 5th, 2023.
Make a motion, we accept the meeting minutes of June 5th, 2023 as written.
Second,
Discussion on those?
No, sir.
no.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting minutes of June 8th, 2023.
Make a motion, we accept the meeting minutes of June 8th, 2023 as written.
Second,
Discussion?
None.
no.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We have 2023 reappointments for boards, commissions, and representatives. If we make all the appointments in those tables, we'll still have 3 open seats in Cable Advisory Committee, 4 in Council on Aging, 2 in the Cultural Council. We have open seat for the Franklin, or assignment for the Franklin Regional Council of Governments representative, select board member. Franklin Regional Transportation Authority, also a select board member. We can adjust those on our first July meeting. 2 openings in the Historical Commission, 1 in the Public Works Feasibility Committee, and 1 on the Zoning Board of Appeals. Any questions or concerns about the list?
I have none.
I know every year we try to shorten this motion, but I don't think we can ever get to where we'd like. Do we want to?
No, we got to go through and do each one, correct?
Yep, we do. What, who, term ending, or term of? Term ending, really.
Term ending.
Yeah. And effective, I guess.
Yeah.
Do you want to take a stab at some of them?
Yeah,
and
I'll get going.
we'll hand off somewhere along the way.
Make a motion, we appoint Philip Wonka for term of July 1st, 2023, ending June 30th, 2024, to the Ambulance Advisory Representative. You want me to just do a batch?
Yeah, you can do a batch. That's totally fine.
David Brule for 1 year, effective July 1, 2023, ending June 30th, 2024. Archaeological Preservation Officer. Warren Boyden and Teresa Dodge, terms of 1 year each, July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2024, as Board of Registrars. Peter Mallett, term of 3 years, starting July 1, 2023, ending June 30th, 2026, to the Capital Planning Committee. Mariah Kurtz, term of 1 year, starting July 1, 2023 through June 30th, 2024, Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy Committee Rep. Carolyn Berg and David Brule, each for terms of 3 years, July 1, 2023 through June 30th, 2026, to the Conservation Commission. Gary Betters and Joseph Bucci, terms of 3 years, starting July 1, 2023 through June 30th, 2026, on the Council of Aging. Leslie Brown, term of 3 years, starting July 1, 2023 through June 30th, 2026, to the Cultural Council. Richard Newton and Philip Wonka, each terms of 1 year, starting July 1, 2023 through June 30th, 2024, to the E911 Planning Committee. Pamela Bethelier, Rebecca Miller, and Joyce Newton, all terms of 1 year, starting July 1, 2023 through June 30th, 2024, as election tellers. Leslie Brown for a term of 1 year, July 1, 2023 through June 30th, 2024, as an election warden. Nancy Kruslick for a term of 1 year, July 1, 2023 through June 30th, 2024, as the election clerk. Mariah Kurtz, 1 year, July 1, 2023 through June 30th, 2024, as the Franklin Regional Planning Board Representative. Jacqueline Boyden, 1 year, July 1, 23 through June 30th, 24, Franklin County Cooperative Inspection Representative. Brian Smith, 1 year, from July 1, 23 through June 30th, 24, Franklin County Solid Waste Management District Rep. The Brian Smith, 1 year, July 1, 23 through June 30, 24, Franklin Regional Council of Government Alternate Rep. David Brule, Kelly Lloyd, and John Rice, each for 1 year, July 1, 23 through June 30th, 24, as the Golden Cane Committee. David Brule, 3 years, July 1, 23 through June 30th, 24. On the Historical Commission. Jason Bassett, 1 year, July 1, 23 through June 30th, 24, as a mutual aid police officer. Jacqueline Boyden and Joseph Bucci, each for a term of 1 year, July 1, 23 through June 30th, 24, in the Open Space Committee. Mariah Kurtz, Peter Mallett, Glenn McCrory, Peter Sanders, each for 1 year, July 1, 2023 through June 30th, 2024, Public Works Feasibility Committee. William Bembury, Gary Betters, Paula Betters, Jacqueline Boyden, Leslie Brown, George Moonlight Davis, Jean Galbraith, each for 1 year, effective July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2024, in the Senior Housing Committee. Gary Betters, Armand Bethelier, and Daniel Hammock, each for 1 year, July 1, 2023 through June 30th, 2024, on the Veterans Committee. Gary Betters, 1 year, July 1, 2023 through June 30th, 2024, Veterans Services Representative. And Daniel Hammock, 3 years, July 1, 2023 through June 30th, 2026, on the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Thank you.
That's all. I'm going home.
That's all, folks. All those in favor?
Aye.
Review proposed revisions to the assistant treasurer position description. So it's a request to modify or increase the essential function duties in that position description per the memo from the treasurer. And a request to regrade it potentially based on those changes.
She's not here to speak to it, but is this the one that was included? And you might know this, Jake. Is this amended?
Yes, it
I
is.
didn't pull up the old
It
one
is
to
amended.
cross-reference, and I don't see the track changes on the PDF version, so I just wanted to make
It's
sure.
the last three, I mean, specific for the essential function.
That's what I
It's the
thought,
last
yeah.
three bullets in that section.
Yeah.
And so, yes, it is. And then the second part about the classification versus the level of responsibility.
Yeah.
My understanding is there's no edits to the job description specifically. It's just in the grading of that, the level of confidentiality, accountability, judgment, and complexity versus the current. Obviously, no expectation that we're going to make a decision tonight or anything, and adopt a change. Just starting the conversation if there's questions for the treasurer with regards to the edits or the request.
Just because she's not here, I think I'd like to ask her about it. I can always shoot her an email if there's any questions that I have, before
Okay.
we act on it.
Stuff you'll do separately, or do we want to have her at the next meeting to talk to it a little more?
Yeah, I have no concerns with the
I don't think,
job
I
description.
can do it separately if I have
Okay.
any.
If you have anything
I don't
before
have
the
anything
26th.
that jumps out, but I'd at least like her here in case, I'd like to at least read it more than,
Yeah, we're not
the
gonna.
weekend
Yeah,
before we
absolutely.
make a change like that.
Okay, we'll carry it for next meeting.
Thank you.
Any other notes or concerns, questions on the as written or as amended job description
No.
proposed? Review and issuance of the 15th water commitment for FY23.
Make a motion, we accept the 15th water commitment for fiscal year 2023 in the amount of $120.
Second.
Any discussion?
Negative.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
With that, it's almost 7 o'clock, so I will wait a moment here and we'll get ready for the joint meeting.
Okay. My assumption is the conflict of interest policy was not
The
ready.
draft was not ready. I believe that is true, yes. Just to clarify whether we'll get a copy before the night is out or we'll just pass over it. Either way, it's just a first read, so
Right.
it won't be any discussion anyway, so. You're all welcome to come up. We'll get started in a minute. Anytime.
Did those print? Are they? Probably need a magnifying glass to read them.
We do.
I tried to scale it, and all of a sudden, I should have changed the margins on it, but it'll work for the sake of discussion, anyways.
If you guys want them, those are extra.
Yeah. There's not a chance I can read that without my glasses, and I forgot them at home tonight. So
Do you want a copy?
I sent it to you. You have it electronically.
I think you'll take it on the computer, yeah.
Yeah, I'll look at the computer.
Yeah, you're better off.
Gotcha.
Is that the same one, the same memo that you sent?
No, this is something totally different
Oh, okay.
from Jackie from Rex.
Ah, okay.
Oh, for FDM Pro.
Closeouts. You and
Okay. Do you
I'll-
have one or you're good?
I'll,
Or share one with
I'll
you?
follow along if I have to.
Okay,
And I went short and so.
That's fine.
that's all right.
We can share.
Call the joint meeting of the Finance Committee and the Capital Planning Committee to order at 7:02 PM. You let me know when you're ready, sir, and we'll get going. Thank you. I think it was after you stepped out. There was a couple different tables sent around by Scott and Deb, so we'll probably be,
Sorry.
we'll probably be talking about them, and there's some microscopic printouts if you'd like to look at them over there. Just so you have them for reference. I think that is the last one. Okay, review of the special town meeting draft warrant for Wednesday, June 28th, 2023. Article 1, revolving fund transfer for continuing appropriation for Vest Field. I know there was some questions last time. Are you here representing?
I am.
All right, come on up, Jackie, thank you.
Considering it was my article I drafted, yes.
Understood.
And I apologize for not being here last week.
I don't know who wants to start, or do you want to just, I mean, briefly outline? I think some of the questions were just around not having a, like, maybe capital. I don't believe I was at those meetings, so I don't know if someone, Ben, or if someone from capital wants to talk to a little bit. I think this went back to some of the capital requests and a request for an updated master plan before any of those requests were considered or approved. So I think there was a question mark about how this fits in and, you know, funding it at this point. I'm
So-
paraphrasing, but
Right. Well, I'll just start from the beginning. It'd probably be a little easier. We are crafting the article because by law, we can only keep $10,000 in our revolving account as of June 30th, and currently we are $18,000 over it. This was a discussion that we had at a Recreation Commission meeting about our future plans. One of them is the redesign and revamping of Veterans Field. We are going to be, and this actually ties in with the special appropriations discussion later on, but we want to hire a grant writer to pursue a park grant that would help us hire a designer. They did a survey about 3 or 4 years ago about what the needs of the future that the townspeople wanted in the park, for the parks. And rather than let the money go back to the general fund or spend it just to spend it, we wanted to put it in a place that we would use it for the future. Our discussion centered around what was our next big project. A park grant does require matching funds from the town. And so it was suggested, I had suggested that we take the excess from the revolving and start putting money away for the future, hopefully the future grant. This is sort of what we did when we were on the library building committee. We allocated funds every year, so we had a little nest egg. It actually looks good on grant applications that you're planning for the future. So that is how this article came about. At the time that I drafted, it looked like we had 10,000, but according to the latest, with the funds coming in for Summer Park, we'll have $18,000 over the 10,000. So that's the reason for the article, but I'm happy to field any questions.
Can you just, Jackie, speak to, a lot of other rec departments locally self-fund, and so seeing that there's $18,000 kind of extra funding, why isn't this funding ever used to fund things like the Berkshire snowshoe trips or jerseys and stuff for the different sporting the sports teams and things like that? And like, that's enough for, I mean, you have $18,000 extra, that's your $15,000 Zilinski dugout capital project.
So I can't speak about the past. I can only speak about moving forward. I've only been on the committee since December or January of this past year. So we're tracking our expenses better than we were. We're more accountable about it. That was one of the things that the FinCom and the Capital Committee took us to task, was we really didn't know how much certain programs cost. In all honesty, we didn't want to lose this money for this year, but knowing that we still have to do a better job with our bookkeeping moving forward. There had been some discussion about like buying a new tent and that sort of thing, but that's not going to amount to this sort of money. And like I said, in the strategic plan, one of the goals is the redesign of Betts Park, and that's a big ticket item. So that was why we thought, okay, we'll start an account, we'll do the seed money thing, and then we'll have it when, either if we get a grant or we don't get a grant, we'll have money to put towards the redesign of Betts Field. And that was that. So we are moving towards that goal of being more accountable on what everything is, in getting a better control on the expenses, but currently, part of it is a hangover from COVID, a low enrollment as far as the elementary programs are concerned. We can still get all of that within our budget, and we did not ask for additional funds we asked, no, actually we didn't, because we slashed the budget as requested. So we pretty much level funded this past year, or close to it. Don't quote me on that, because there was a lot going on. But, so that was it. Does that answer your question, or do you have?
Kind of. I guess I just wonder, with costs and everything going up, if the rec has any intent to move towards being a little more self-funded, with us having to potentially look at doing an override. Is that something that you guys are looking into at all, or? Yes,
The snowboarding or snow tubing was a great example. They had kept the cost fairly inexpensive at $5 a participant. We have decided not to actually look at the cost of what the program, and then either do a 50-50 or a 30-70, depending on, or some programs are free, like the egg hunt's free, Halloween is free, that sort of thing. But the activities one, we need to get some money, we need to have money coming back in, and they actually do charge for the sports when we do have it and that sort of thing. There is a charge for that. And we did raise the price of Summer Park considerably this year, and went from $75 to $125 a week, so.
Is that for residents or out-of-towners?
Out-of-towners pay $225, they pay $100 more. So we are moving towards that to be more accountable. It's all kind of one big picture for me when I'm looking at it, but we are trying to achieve that.
Okay. And when will, we asked for the strategic plan update months ago, so is there a time frame of when you'll have that to the Capital Committee? Yes,
we talked about it at our meeting on Saturday. It's on our agenda for our meeting again in 2 weeks, and we will work on it over the summer. There's a plan in place, but it wasn't brought forth to be approved yet. As you well know, the Recreation Commission was down 3 members and had been, I think, for, 4 or 6 months before I joined, and Katie Sadler joined. So they weren't able to meet, and we are playing a little bit catch up. And then on July 1st, we'll have a full committee, which is the first time in a long time they've had a full committee. So it's on the list, I can assure you.
But it's still months out.
We have a draft. I won't say it's months out. We have one that we haven't really looked at and discussed. I think there'll be some moving around with it. There is one in place, but it's not one that 3 of the 5 members have seen. So I think it'll probably be at least a couple meetings before we decide on it, bring forth. But there is a draft around.
Okay.
So do we have things in the current budget that have been funded but not done yet?
Well, I can go right into my little memo if you'd like, since I'm here.
Well, we need-
Okay. So at our June 10th meeting, and we discussed the status of the 9 special appropriation articles that we currently have open. After discussion, we voted to close or give up the 2 of the following articles: the roofs, the bathhouse, and shed at Zilinski Field, the Riverfront Park Water Tower Assessment. However, we'd like to update you on the following remaining articles. Resurfacing the tennis courts at Vets Field. We would like to transfer these funds at the next special town meeting, and I didn't mean the one coming up in July, June 28th, but the one after. As stated previously, the redesign of Vets Field is one of our top priorities, and we are anticipating working on this project for fiscal year 2024 once we have a full committee. These funds were allocated for the tennis court at that park, which would be part of the redesign. The park grant writer, as stated previously in previous conversations, we are exploring the redesign of Veterans Field. We are hoping to hire a grant writer to help us apply for a park grant to fund this endeavor. The volleyball court at Zilinski Field, we have spoken with the DPW Superintendent Glenn McCory and currently have a work request to have this work done during the fiscal '24 year.
Maggie,
Yes.
didn't we talk about this going away?
The, which one,
Volleyball
Pete?
court, wasn't,
Not, well,
wasn't it something about they were gonna put the money towards the, redoing the parks over?
Not this one.
not this,
It's not ringing a bell with the volleyball court. I think it was that
This is
they
the
had.
beach volleyball court, right? The one,
well, I guess you call it a beach one. It's gonna have a sand, it's gonna have,
Yeah.
Sand in
I
it.
thought we talked
Was it the
about
one
that
that
going
used to be
away.
there, then got abandoned, and now it's being put back?
I don't know, because I've only been on the committee since January, so I don't know.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Same spot too?
No, different spot.
I think that was it, Pete, was they had talked about doing this and then there had been a delay for various reasons. And then there was the possibility of a complete restructuring up there, of like
Right.
moving the baseball field and everything.
Yep.
And so I think those I think they were very hypothetical conversations that
Okay.
we might be recalling.
Well, I can tell you that we worked with Glenn, we picked a spot that we all agreed on, and it's probably not in the spot previously, but it's in a spot that will work. And we already have the volleyball net, so it's really just the surface that we would be designing, well, we would be building. The ADA compliance and upgrades to Zilinski Park. We recently had a playground specialist do an inspection on the playground equipment and are in the process of removing the unsafe equipment and trying to repair the other equipment. We are working with the town administrator, Brian Smith, to find a vendor to purchase and do the work to make the park ADA compliant with regards to the playground apparatus and swings. We anticipate this project will be completed before the end of 2024. The Zilinski Park dugouts, we voted to remove the existing dugouts and are exploring the ideas of replacing the dugouts with fencing that would include cement pads and benches. We hope to have this completed before the end of 2024. We did discuss the dugouts at our last meeting on Saturday. Once the old dugouts are removed, there's going to be a hole because they were part of the fence. They were where, so we'll need to do something. The Riverfront Park electrical service and improvements. We are working towards finishing this project before the end of 2024. As you know, former Recreation Commissioner Jeffrey Rollins oversaw this part of the project. Mr. Rollins has since relocated but failed to leave any information regarding what work had been done or still needs to be done. The Recreation Commissioner Eric Elkhorn was working with Mr. Rollins and will be working with the town administrator towards completion of this project. We are exploring the idea of working with the Franklin County Tech School electrical shop to have the work performed. It's the intent to finish the project before the end of 2024. If funds are left over after that, we are looking at signage, but wanted to see if the town had decided on a town logo. The Park Street renovation and improvements. We are finishing this project. We need to finish the ADA compliance, which involves creating a walkway to connect with the ADA swing. We are working to have this small project completed when the town does other cement work in '24, and other work includes the placements of, I think, the bullocks, the big bollards. I knew I had it wrong. Which the DPW is overseeing, and we hope to have the project completed by the end of '24. I have great goals for the end of this fiscal year '24. We're going to have a full committee. We're energized. We understand that we need to show progress or completion on these special appropriation projects, and we take responsibility for asking for the funds and not completing the projects in a timely manner. But ask you to take into consideration the COVID outbreak and the loss of 3 of our 5 commissioners during that time. We are moving forward. To that extent, we have made great strides in reorganizing our commission and will have a full commission as of July 1st. We have set a scheduled meeting time and date. It's the fourth Saturday at 1 p.m. at the public library, and have formed subcommittees to be more efficient. Additionally, we are educating ourselves regarding what can and cannot be done within the municipal government framework. We also recognize that we need to review and update our strategic plan on a yearly basis. So that's all it in a nutshell. Any questions?
The $18,000, do you have any, looking for the correct word, rules or bylines about when you would use it, what you would use it for, things you wouldn't use it for?
Well, the first thing we need to do is figure out what we want to do with that park, right? And there is a survey that was done, and there's a general plan, but it's never quite been brought to the next level. So that's what I'm hoping will happen in this coming fiscal year, that we will move forward, we'll settle, maybe we find a designer, you know, maybe that's where some of that 18,000 is towards. It's a big project, and we're really trying to wrap our heads around what we want to do for the future, because we're not just planning for a couple of years, we're doing a complete revamp. So we really want to plan for the future. And some of the survey information is already old. It doesn't seem like 3 years is old, but it's already old. And so we might want to update some other features. So no, not yet, other than we won't be spending on frivolous items. It'll be for the big project.
Yeah, I was just wondering about things like, I mean, when you come to us to ask us for a capital expenditure and you have $18,000 in the account and it costs $5,000.
We wouldn't be coming to you for that.
That's what I was
not-
trying to get
no,
at.
that's not, no.
I think part of my concern is some of these projects that you're working on, like the ADA compliance up at Zilinski Park, the dugout, the riverfront park electrical, those estimates and those quotes, or if there were quotes at the time, are so old at this point. I am fearful that they're gonna come in and be more than what you have appropriations for. And I disagree with putting the $18,000 away for a park. I feel strongly Vets Park needs a redo, but capital hasn't weighed in on it yet. No one has, like Board of Selectmen or anyone has said they support that yet. And so it feels like we're putting funding aside for a park that we don't know if there is going to be support for, but you have projects right now that money could possibly be used for. So I think, at least for me, it would make more sense to put the money aside, so if or when some of these projects go over, you have funding available.
The committee is not tied to Vets Field. If we wanted to change the warrant article to be more general for parks in general, that would be fine with us. We were just looking for a purpose, not to lose the money at the end of June, and Vets Field was our big thing. I do know in the strategic plan that the FERCog worked with the Recreation a few years ago. The Vets redesign is in there, so I was under the impression that you had all had a discussion about it previously, so I'm sorry that I didn't realize that.
It was in the strategic plan that was given to us, but to the best of my knowledge, I believe like a placeholder capital request might have been put in, but
Okay.
the Recreation Commission never came forward and said, the only thing we've discussed in detail was the park grant writer, and moving forward with that, unless I am mistaken.
I recall it being very preliminary, and we
Okay.
were looking for a lot more meat on the bones.
Well, that's good feedback for us, and then we'll make sure you have a hearty dinner.
Yeah, because that was, just so you know, that was part of the reason why we asked for the strategic plan redo, and it was part of why we kicked back all Rex requests, because we know COVID threw you guys off. And so some of the things that were like FY '24, we were questioning, well, is that really going to happen, or because of COVID is now that pushed out? So that's why we had asked to see that strategic plan redone, so that way you guys had the opportunity to say, oh no, we can still nail this one in FY '24, but now this one is bigger, so we might need to move that. So, you know, you could do your shifting and everything. But I thought we were pretty clear that the requests were not approved until that strategic plan came back. So I am a little surprised that it's taking this long to get that update. I understand there's been shifting and changing, I totally do, but, you know.
I was unaware, and all I can tell you is that moving forward, we're gonna do a better job, and, you know, I'm experienced in municipal government, and I've served many years on many committees, and Bill will be there on July 1st, so you'll have two experienced members who understand the way that it works and what is required, rightfully so required to move projects forward, and the timelines on getting this stuff done. I think that, I do believe that the Recreation Commission meant to do a lot, but COVID and the loss of the members just really, it was very difficult for them. They really couldn't do anything.
Do you have the projects prioritized? I guess the worry that I have is, I heard a lot of gonna be done by the end of 2024. And if you've got 4 or 5 projects running and they're all running over,
Well,
so if you could say, this is the number 1 project and we're gonna get this finished, and then if we have money left, we can do this project.
well, for the special appropriation, we're gonna get the volleyball court done. It's already in the process. I put the work
Okay.
order in, and it's gonna be done. The ADA compliance with Zilinski Park, the first step was even seeing if the playground equipment was safe, and what was the life of the playground equipment, which according to the specialist is 5 years, although we do have to make some repairs. So our next step is finding playground pieces to replace those pieces. We might come back and say we cannot, and if we can't safely dismantle it, we might have to scrap it. But regardless, the engineered mulch that's gonna go there and make it can still happen. And the swing sets that were being removed, we already have a swing set to replace it, and we're gonna order another swing set. So I feel that the mulch and the swing set part is gonna be done. Whether or not we have a playground apparatus to put in that area might be another, discussion, but for right now, I really think that that one will be finished before the end of the year. The electrical, definitely. If we can't do the electrical, yeah, you need to take the money back. That project has gone on way too long. And, but part of the struggle was there were no notes on what was done and what wasn't done. And so it's taken us this long just to figure that out. And then the dugout replacement, we'll have a decision about that one way or the other. The dugouts are gonna be gone. You did your 3rd read tonight, so that'll spurn things on. We've done a lot in the last 3 months. We've gotten rid of a lot of unsafe equipment or surplus equipment that was hanging around. So I think that we're, like I said, we're motivated, and we are meeting every month, sometimes twice a month, and rolling things along. The Park Street renovations, I think that's just finishing up a few ends that should be done. So I think that's about it as far as the special appropriations.
Wasn't there something about tennis courts as well?
The Veterans Field I'd like to allocate to the fund, but it doesn't need to be done right now, because it sounds like we have to do our homework, and we have to go back, and we actually have to go before the capital improvement.
Yeah, I remember those numbers
It's 63,000.
widely
Yeah.
changing. Every time I
So
heard them.
that's one thing that we'll need to do. I was unaware that you hadn't been briefed on it.
Okay, thank you.
They already
Your
grilled
broad
me, so
shoulders
you're
up
good.
there tonight. Yeah, no, I know, and I know you're new to it, so understand if you don't have the answers. But I look at some of this, like the park grant writer was requested beginning of '21 for the FY22 budget. So that was during COVID. It wasn't impacted by COVID in theory, because everything since then has theoretically been easier, hopefully. And we're going on 2 years with no action. So then we'll be moving into 3. And for me, this year and where we are financially going into next year, I've said it to Brian a few times, looking at, and I appreciate the holistic look, looking at all of the money we just have parked for projects that we haven't started and have sat for a long time. Some of these are since 2016 to 2017. It's hard for me to say, well, if we don't have an action plan very soon to why are we still parking it there? And I'm not going to go specifically into these. I mean, the park one, I'm not saying we shouldn't have it. I think we should, but until we have a plan on what that looks like and what we're trying to write a grant for, I don't know that we need money for a writer. It sounds a little cart and horse, but, and I, you know, I'm not.
You know, your criticism's justified. Things slid for a while, for a variety of reasons. But all I can say is, could you give us a year? Because I personally want to make sure that we have most of these projects wrapped up in this upcoming fiscal year. And if we can't, then we don't deserve to have the funds allocated for those projects. You know, it sounds a little harsh, but that's it in a nutshell. You know, just give us some time to work together. I think we've got a good group. We had a very productive meeting on Saturday. I think that moving forward, we'll have more productive meetings. We have since I joined the committee. Not that it's me. I just think it's just because we got 2 new members and we're enthusiastic and it's breathing some new life in there and we're moving forward into, you know, a different direction. And some of it was getting some of the other members just to understand the way that the process works. So some of it, they had declared surplus, but they didn't realize there was one more step, that it had to go before the select board. So some of it is that. So you could take away the grant writer, but I hope you don't, because I'm really hoping that before the end of the fiscal year, 24 is out, that we have a clearer vision of where to go for that, and we actually get in. Because none of us had the experience to write grants at all.
I remember our last one. There's a lot involved. Fair, and I wasn't specifically saying to or not to take it
Yeah.
away. Just the,
Well,
you
it's
know,
your
I think
prerogative.
your honest response. I appreciate it. Maybe more back to the STM article we have today.
Yes.
And I may look at this differently, but when we did the library, we didn't have the capital planning committee yet. When that started, we started putting money away and all that. That was pre.
It was.
I understand the matching funding and all, but like if there's a capital project out there and it's on the horizon, we have a capital stabilization now, things like that. I don't know that earmarking money for projects that's not defined as a starting point, I feel like that is the purpose of the capital planning process and stabilization and those things. So to park more money somewhere, it doesn't. That one doesn't make a lot of sense to me. If we want to go park it in capital stabilization, okay, but, or, you know, that would make more sense to me than specific to one thing, because, I mean, how far out is that? You know, even if we have a writer this coming year, are we talking FY 25, 26 before we're probably in?
Probably. I
So-
have to admit, I don't know enough about the ins and outs of the park grant, other than I know it's a sizable matching fund is required for the towns to get the grants. I mean, so yes, it's June. We're in a bit of a pickle because technically the money goes into the general fund as of July 1st if it's over the 10,000. I can't speak for the rest of the committee members because they're not here and it's really a discussion we need to have, but I mean, if the capital was willing, if we rolled it into the capital planning fund, knowing, not earmarking it per se, but knowing that we were contributing it towards our future projects, I think that would be amendable. It's not having it in a special article and just sitting there, but it's at least we're as a committee trying to plan for the future of our projects that are, that we know it's going to be expensive. But I was just the article was a stab at trying to plan for the future.
I threw it out there, so I don't want to speak for the whole group. Well, you're all here and know what your thoughts are.
I think for the 18,000, I'd rather see that in an article that the Recreation Commission can access. I suspect, looking at this, like the electrical for Riverfront Park, given the economy today, I don't think you're going to get it done for $23,000. And so I'm okay with them having that in a fund, maybe not specifically earmarked to Vets Field, but for various park projects. So when some of the stuff, like the Zilinski Park dugouts, I suspect that's probably gonna go over 15,000. So they will have that funding to use that money and have it available to them. Capital in the past has kind of briefly talked about the idea that we don't, if we know a specific project, just for Vets Field, for example, is coming up, we wouldn't necessarily, that's the point of having the capital stabilization account. So that funding would be set aside and we would take it, and if we committed to $25,000 a year, and if we needed it for FY '25, we would make sure by FY '25, we had that X amount that we're supposed to have. And so like the resurface, the Vets tennis courts, the 63,000, that personally, I think should just cash out back to the capital stabilization account. And then down the road, as you know, the park grant is being applied for, or you have it, you have your actual proposal ready, then we can go forward and start saying, having that conversation of what funding gets put aside, how much, and that sort of thing. The park grant writer, I suspect 20,000 may not be enough for that, but it isn't anything I would touch at this time. I would be willing, just personally, to give them to the end of FY '24 to see if, to get that going.
Good, I think good point about the Vets Field piece, because that's a big chunk of money, and it's been growing since 2017 or something, where we started at 15. Most of us will remember that. The other question that I had was just in general, the goal, which is admirable, of trying to get these all actually done in this fiscal year. I know you've noted in some places where, there's been discussions with stakeholders on ability to do it. Is that true on all of the ones that are earmarked for this year, that generally whatever other resources in the town have been, like, I'll pick on Glenn because he's here. I know you noted that discussions happened, there's capacity. Is that true with all of the ones that were noted for '24?
Yes, pretty much. The Park Street one, yes, Brian and I have had discussions, and Bretta, the recreation assistant, have had discussions. We've had discussions on the electrical service and improvements, obviously with the dugouts, and I do believe that you're probably right, 15,000 probably won't cover it. So the answer is yes, other than resurfacing the tennis courts, which I didn't realize was there until a couple weeks ago, and even I went, wow. But then again, I was thinking, okay, rather than lose the money, maybe we can earmark it for a different purpose, is what I was thinking about. And I just lost my train of thought. Some of the stuff, like, I want to say, like with the electrical, we had tried to work on it this fiscal year, but didn't connect with the tech school, and then realized when we were doing that we didn't really have a plan. We didn't know what work had been done. So that led to further delay, because step one is finding out exactly what needs to be done. And Mr. Rollins is not in the area anymore and wouldn't answer our questions anyway. So yes.
Thank you. So if I'm following right now, I'm hearing modifying recommendation right now is to modify Article 1 to be for parks or park renovations or something more generic,
Yes.
to, so for park improvements or park improvements, and then it's available for any project here that doesn't have enough. And then, I don't know if it's on this one or not, and I understand if it's not, because last second, or a future one, the tennis courts for vets, to move that into capital stabilization rather than, that's the recommendation, rather than us leaving it or a separate article.
I'd also ask if the other two, those are leftover funds from capital. And so capital has not had the opportunity to discuss this yet because we haven't met. I'd kind of like to propose the idea that if there's leftover funds from a project that was a capital project, that the leftover funds actually go back or go into the capital stabilization account. That way they're available, they've already been appropriated for a capital project, and then that way they'd be available for another capital project down the road. So I would ask that the other two, the 1736 and the 4700, also go into the capital stabilization.
Brian. I'd like to hear what he has to say before I weigh in.
Sure,
If you're gonna do that,
yes,
can't close out funds for June 30 like you intended to the general fund.
correct.
So we would then need to either get it onto this town meeting, which means a whole new article,
Mm-hmm,
and all the other town departments that you haven't considered yet, you're doing that at your next meeting.
mm-hmm.
Or we're gonna have to add, you're not gonna close them out June 30, carry them into the next and deal with them at your next town meeting.
Sorry to be difficult.
No, it's a fine suggestion, just there's a mechanical piece to that that we have to do through the voters.
We can close them out at any town meeting. It doesn't have to be an annual, correct? It can be any special.
Correct.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're already gonna do one in the
I mean,
fall.
into capital stabilization, yes.
Yeah, we can do it
Into the
anytime.
general fund, what, the last 2 months? Or anytime?
When we're closing the books in July.
Yeah, so we
You
can
can
do
close them
that.
out.
The board can do that in the last, like, right now.
Right.
For July. To the notes you said and everything else, I mean, we don't have an article drafted. Yes, we could draft one, but I hate to try to do that tonight and approve it tonight. That's not really reasonable.
No.
To Brian or anybody else.
No.
And we will likely have more if we go through this, and if
Yes.
we all agree that the idea of moving capital, article surplus back into capital, I guess, for lack of a better term, then there'll be more, most likely. I don't hear any reluctance to that. Did you still have something, sir?
Well, just 2 points, actually. One, Jackie, did you say that Mr. Icorn was trying to connect with Mr. Rollins or was unsuccessful doing that?
No, at our last meeting, when I brought forth that we were looking for the plans, Eric had said, well, I walked through most of it with him, and he was gonna meet with Brian, and they're gonna go over together. He might be able to. According to the discussion we had at the meeting, there was a lot more work done than we thought there was. So, I think we'll get a pretty good idea of what work needs to be done after Eric meets with Brian and they walk through the park.
So there are still several people in town that have connections with Mr. Rollins. You said he wouldn't answer your questions anyways.
Well, there was some hard feelings on the previous Recreation Commission with some of the other employees and officials in town.
Okay, if it's a matter of trying to get information, I'd be willing to try and
No, well,
help facilitate that.
If we can't figure it out, then I thank you, I appreciate it.
Okay. The second thing I wanted to ask, and Ms. Smith partially clarified, I understand the value of having a professional in your pocket. Grant writer cost is approximately $20,000. Is that what I'm hearing, or more?
What a cost would be, or what we have in that article?
What it would potentially be?
I don't know. I wouldn't speculate. Personally, I don't know, because I don't think we've gone out to get one yet, and it's been a couple of
It's been
years.
years.
It's been years since we did a park grant,
Right.
and probably half as many years since we appropriated money for a future writer. So, don't know.
So the anticipated awards for a park grant, I hope, would provide a satisfactory return on that investment, if it's $20,000?
Our last one was 400,000 was the project, and I believe we got, or, yeah, right?
It was-
And we got 52 or 58%.
The project was,
Sorry, I looked it up and the reimbursement is 52%.
That's correct.
And the due date is July 13th, so I think we missed it for this year.
correct.
Definitely.
Your project was over $850,000, but 52% came from the state. The rest
So-
was appropriated by you.
So 400 was from the state, and then we paid the rest, or
Correct.
something like that. Okay,
Correct.
Thank you.
So there's a satisfactory return on investment is what I'm hearing. Perfect.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And I don't know that that's the cap or the max, or just what our project was that fit. I don't know. So I think it's higher.
Well, 52% is the cap for Erving.
No, I mean, for
Oh.
getting
sorry.
400,000 potential, I don't know that that's a cap. I think that was relative to our project at the time.
Right.
But that's fine.
Okay,
So.
now that potentially makes sense to me. Potential return on investment.
I think it's there, and if we apply in a cycle, as far as I know, we've written it all up, we've paid that, at some cost. If we don't get approved, we can resubmit next year. And the work to update one, once it's written, is something I think we can do in-house, right? So I think that investment will stay as long as that project needs funding. Yes?
I just wanted to add in that the maximum award amount is 500,000.
Okay. So 500 is the max award. So that's close to $1 million project, so substantial. So, right now, what I'm hearing is an amendment to Article 1 to change it to park improvements rather than specific to Veterans Field. Changing it to $18,000
Yes.
from $10,000.
Yes. And we understand.
And we'll have to update the article information slightly. And then the other three items will close out to capital stabilization at a future STM. And questions or concerns from you on behalf of Rec here tonight or anyone else on that?
We understand what the capital planning and finance committee is saying, and that we will we'll move forward and try to be, try to get some of these projects done.
Good to hear. And I think capital, when you're ready to submit a park grant and you need to show matching funds, if that needs to be in a separate article to show that, we can move it out at that time, get a request
Yep.
in, and, we'll understand at that point the vision and the plan.
Yep.
Right?
And we will try to have the strategic plan done before the end of the summer. I know it seems like a lot, but it is the summertime, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We're gonna edit on the fly, are we kind of, sort of? Okay. Good with Article 1.
We can let Jackie on the hot seat.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you, Jackie.
All right.
And again, thank you for the very detailed listing. I do appreciate that. Article 2, appropriation for the water capital improvement, $51,000 for the mixer project for the water tank from the enterprise fund.
I believe we voted to approve this
Oh,
one
we
last
did.
time.
Yeah, that's why it's all
Yep.
red down there.
Yep.
If I scroll through. Same on 3.
Yep.
Number 4, rescind the borrowing authorization for Church Street Bridge.
Yeah, this was the one with, did we keep part of it? Did we give it
Yeah.
back?
Yes,
in case
okay.
it
This was the one that
overran.
we kind of parked because we weren't sure
Yeah.
where to go with that.
I don't think we were sure what the money was that we wanted to keep in there.
There was a question of time frame and would they give us 60 days to pull together a meeting for funding? I don't remember all the,
I haven't been able to get an answer yet on that. But that is exactly the question.
okay.
Yep.
Glad someone had the whole question. I think where we left it last time was the risk to potential other borrowing, but the idea that we could convey that can close out in asking for something else. So whether or not we made it smaller or left it alone for now is probably the same impact. If we had a plan for another borrowing and telling them what we're doing with this. So since we don't know that, are we saying we just scrap it, leave it, scrap the article for now, and revisit when we have answers if we want to reduce it in a future meeting, a future STM?
Yes.
Scrapped it.
I hope not that long. Okay, so
Removing
Article 4 is off. Put it in the parking lot for the next STM. Prior Article 5, updated language per our discussion with council. These are the gift-taking purchase of temporary right-of-ways. They are temporary, correct?
It's all
Doesn't say it, but they are.
It does in the table.
In the table, it says temporary.
Thank you. questions, concerns, thoughts? We're gonna go ahead with it based on council and based on the language from last time we needed to do takings or temporary, rights away for the sidewalks and just get it done, so then it's in place and it should be compliant with whatever we get back from DOT at that time.
Only one correction to what the language that's in front of you. In the first sentence where it says by right, I just need to modify that to say by gift.
Gift.
Yep.
Gift purchase eminent or otherwise?
Emitting or otherwise correct.
This was for which street projects?
Church Street Bridge.
Okay.
This is parcels where we would need to either disturb or relocate things to temporarily while doing the bridge construction. And then return to original conditions before
Thank you.
completion. I think it's utilities and et cetera.
And then the only other change we made was in the article information, we clarified that it's a 2/3 supermajority vote.
2/3 super.
Well, 2/3 vote, but yes. Language from council.
Okay. But the super doesn't add anything to the 2/3.
No, it
It's
doesn't.
still the 2/3.
But
it's super.
Super.
Do we get paid?
Can we take super out? We never say super on any other one in the past.
I will gladly take it out.
Correct?
Thank you.
Anybody have any concerns? To me, it's just going to create more confusion on what's different today from every other 2/3 article we've ever had.
Somebody has to wear a cape.
All town meetings going for, not me, no. It was all funny until it was me, no.
Can we get him tights too?
Okay, so we're gonna scrap the word super as well. Oh goodness. Any concerns, questions? Good with it?
Good with it.
Okay. And then the zoning one, which at this point, I don't expect we're changing anything. It's referencing what is changing, and that's what it
We're
is.
not changing a single word in that warrant.
Till Thursday night.
Wait, it doesn't say a super vote majority in there.
It does not need a super, yes, actually,
fine,
it doesn't, it does need a.
2/3.
2/3.
Yeah, it
Is it
doesn't,
in here?
can we either do
It's
two-thirds
in there,
majority
it's in
or
there, it's
2/3
2/3.
vote across the board? Can we do 2/3 majority vote or 2/3 vote, but not both?
Tell me your preference.
I don't have one. Does anybody else?
Nope.
This one's 2/3 vote, the other one's 2/3 majority vote.
2/3 majority.
Two-third
There we
majority.
go.
Okay.
We'll read that.
Thank you. So we are changing it just slightly.
That part is, that's fine.
Anything else? STM, we're good. 7 o'clock on the 28th. At here or school is still a question mark.
We reached out to the school. I know they've got a lot going on, so we haven't heard back yet whether or not the school will
On
be
that night
available
is
that night.
available.
We know that this location is available.
Right. I just don't know if this is big enough for the zoning, for what may be the turnout. That's my
We've had
question.
less than 20 people at our zoning public hearings,
Okay.
and that includes the planning board.
Okay. I'm fine with it. We'll figure it out. Make it work. Leave it here. Unless there's concerns.
I'm fine.
Okay.
Could I just say, I mean, you can have it here if you want, but it's been my experience many times, not many people show up for public hearings. But when it comes to vote on it, they could come out by the busload.
Sure.
If the school's available, I would encourage you to do it there, but it's up to you guys.
If we have to move a location, we have to postpone it? Or reschedule?
Well, you
Or
can
can
call
we
the meeting.
move it at that night?
The moderator can move it. It's the moderator's discretion at that moment.
In a half an hour to the other building or something?
You have to post. There's a posting procedure to move it.
On the door?
In theory, but I think this town does much more than just post the door, so.
I'd be afraid we'd lose people if we did that.
No, I know. I'm just saying, if we take the chance of the school now without knowing for sure it's available, and then we have to move it here because it's not available.
Oh,
if we wanted to go that route. If we want to take the, let's,
School's out.
that's my take.
School is out that week. Their last day, I
Should
believe,
be
is
last
the
day is-
27th.
Yeah. So I can't
But-
imagine that there's a whole lot going on a Wednesday evening that it wouldn't be available.
I believe that to be true.
Let's just plan on it.
Moving it to the school.
If you find out something different before the 28th, then we'll figure out how do we deal with it.
Okay. Still 7 p.m.
Yes.
It's good for me. Do we want, while we're talking about, do we want a joint meeting at 6:30 that night before, or 6 o'clock that night before, or no need unless something comes up?
I would say no need unless something comes up.
Yep.
Okay. We'll
That's what I
plan
was gonna
to just do 7. If there's board business that we need to do, I'll let you guys know whether we're gonna do it after or before, and we'll reach out if there's a need for a joint meeting for any updates.
Sounds good.
Is finance and capital endorsing the remaining articles from tonight?
I believed we said we weren't going to endorse the zonings.
Or take any action?
Yeah, correct.
So I will strike that there.
Is capital weighing in on the transfer to a continuing appropriation, or no, for the surplus and the recreation revolving?
You want us to?
That's up
Didn't
to our
we-
chair.
Didn't we,
We normally weigh in on capital articles.
yeah, but didn't we talk about these last, oh, this is
I got a
changed.
vote on Article 2 and I got a vote on Article 3.
Okay, so we have not voted on that one at all.
I haven't gotten a vote on 1. You're removing 4. And I
Okay.
haven't gotten one on Article 5. So 1 and 5.
I mean, it's a continuing appropriation, but the purpose is capital, so if you wanted to, I think it makes sense. If you don't, it's okay.
I'll go for it. I'm fine.
And then,
Make a motion?
Make them,
Oh,
yes.
I would make a motion to, this is for Article 1,
Yeah.
Or the revolving.
As amended.
recommend.
as amended, to move it into the capital, the remaining appropriations left over. Do I have to say the amounts?
No, not for that one.
that one. Oh, not that one?
No, for number 1, we're changing
Jesus, I
it to
can't
be
read this.
a general, do you have the new language, Brian? for
Oh, the
article?
18,000.
Just to move to recommend.
Yeah.
Okay.
As amended.
So we just need a motion to move to recommend the article as amended for
I would
Article
make a
1.
motion to amend the article. To
Recom-
approve the article as amended.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
And then Church Street takings as well?
take-
Or do you want to do the finance and then come back to?
Finance Committee, do we have a motion on Article 1?
I'd like to make a motion to accept the article as amended.
Is there a second?
So I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then the prior Article 5 around acquisition of land for Church Street. It's not monetary, but at the same time, it's for a capital project, so I don't know what you guys want to do.
I gotta recuse myself on that one. I'm part of it.
Because you're one of 4.
Yes.
I'll make a motion, we recommend Article 4 as amended. 'Cause it will be
Second.
4 at that time.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Be recused.
One abstained or recused.
You just said Article 4, which was rescinding the borrowing authorization.
What?
New article.
It's
Article
amended,
4.
now it's 4.
Yeah,
The amended
yeah.
is actually, the amendment makes it 4. so
Yep, okay.
Part of.
His 4's gone.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep,
Correct.
I have the old version I'm looking at, sorry.
It's okay. Once amended was in there, I figured it better be 4. Any other discussion or concerns, gentlemen, for the warrant?
No.
Okay. Is there a motion to?
finance previously vote on Article 4, Brian?
I was just
It's a
gonna
new
ask the same
Article
thing.
4.
I didn't see it on there.
The what?
Don't
The
believe finance committee
old
made any
Article
for
5.
The old Article 5.
And then we'll come to the future one.
No, they
No.
did not.
Okay. Finance committee, do we have a motion to support Article 4 or not support it? Whatever you gentlemen would like to do.
I make a motion to accept the new Article 4 as amended.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Good call.
You all good with it?
I'm good if you guys are, yeah.
Make a motion to approve the special town meeting warrant dated Wednesday, June 28th, held at 7 PM at the Irving Elementary School, as amended.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Discuss FY '23 budget adjustments. I don't believe there are any this time. Discuss FY '24 wage adjustments.
You can try and read it if you want. Those are just some additional things I threw together, but you should have it in your email.
Thomas is recused. Please.
All right.
Scott, Deb, I
Yeah,
don't know
I'll take
who-
a, I'll take
one
a
of you-
stab at just reviewing the process and where we're at and what we got. Deb, I'll let you fill in as far as the FinCom and the discussion that you all had,
Sounds good.
whatever evening that was, Wednesday, Thursday. So myself, Deb, Brian, we utilized Jen Icorn as the treasurer to do some of the computing for us. She can do it a lot faster than we can. We looked at various proposals. So there was a couple of asks or a couple of discussion points that have happened over the last year or so, looking at various components. One being the base wage adjustment. We used to call it COLAs. We call it base wage adjustments. Whatever percentage that would be, adjustments that would be. The other would be the percentage increase between steps. Currently, we're at 2%. We have other departments in town that see a 3% increase, guaranteed step increase every year. So there was a discussion about looking at changing that, increasing that, what we can do. And then there was also a discussion of the number of steps. And this one got a little more complicated. If we go back several years ago, there was always a discussion of what is the goal of our wage, our compensation plan. One is attracting new employees. So you want to have a starting wage that makes sense, that would attract people to want to come here. And then your increases that are guaranteed throughout the years, you want them to be competitive so that you can stay in the upper tier of the comparables in the surrounding area with a goal of retention. So keeping those pieces in mind, and mind you, there's a few things that we can't work into this factoring because there are a couple of units that have, they're either already under a bargaining unit or are working to be in a bargaining unit, so we have to refrain from using them in these updates until we can sit down at the table and negotiate those. So some of this is a little incomplete, but it's pretty close that we're comfortable with the findings. So there was a consensus that dropping from 15 steps to 10 steps made sense. How to do that, there was several different ideas, different models we looked at, taking out evens, taking out odds. It got very convoluted, but the idea of going back to many years ago saying we want to increase the starting pay so that it's more enticing to people to come in, the idea was to drop steps 1 through 5 to get it down to a 10-step table. In order to do that, we took anybody that was on step 1 through 4, and they were automatically moved up. And I'm not going to reference a new step of 1 through 10 because that just gets convoluted. We're going to say that the new table is just 6 through 15. So we, for ease of comparisons. Anybody on steps 1 through 4 got an automatic move up to step 6 because that's the base that you can bring anybody in on. Now, we started to talk about what would happen with those that were already on 5 that should have gone to 6, and so now you have people that have been here many years, and now they're in the same starting step grade or step as somebody who started last week. So we were trying to keep some equity in movement throughout the new table, and it was decided that we would take all employees that were between steps 5 and 11. And they were going to not just get the 1 step, but it would be a double step to the new step on the table. So just to be clear, if you were in a 5, you went to a 7, not a 6. If you were in a 7, you went to a 9, not an 8. So just to play around with that model, we did that. We then looked at various tables. So anybody in 13, 14, or 15 all went to 15. That's just that caps out at the top. And then that was just a table portion of it, of restructuring it, and then came the multitude of tables that Deb had alluded to the last time we met and talked about it, of a whole host of varying percentages. What does it look like to see the step increase go to 2 1/4, 2 1/2, 2 3/4, 3%? What does it look like if you have no base wage adjustment, all the way including up through 4% base wage adjustment? And we have a lot of those tables on here. So that was happening at the tail end of last week. I had to step out to go and finish up or attend a select board meeting, and Deb finished up those tables and then worked with the finance committee. So I'll let you discuss what happened at that finance committee meeting.
So the finance committee talked about it, and we support the idea of dropping down to a 10-step scale. We are in agreement as to where we are shifting and moving those steps around. We also supported having a 3% step, 3% in between the steps, and we support for FY24 a 4% base wage adjustment. And both Scott and I have emailed some spreadsheets over, so if there's any questions or anything.
Yep, I'll take any questions. Otherwise, I have comments that I would continue to make, but I want to hear from anybody that has questions, comments, concerns.
I think finance met, reviewed, and recommended what
Yep.
we got from finance, so we have that, and then, Bill and I have seen it now, what came from finance, which
Yep.
is the 3 and, the 4 and 3 between steps, and dropping the first 5.
Yep.
So, are there, I guess, Bill, do you have any questions about that? And then, if not, I'm good for now to hear what else, Scott, you had.
I have no questions on the tables.
Okay.
So,
Go ahead.
So my concern after looking at it and looking at the dollars, so again, these are approximate costs, and there's going to be some slight variations. And so what we did to get these approximate costs was we looked at every single step and grade of the current employee. Now, some of these we had recent changes from one grade to another. Some of those weren't incorporated in here. So there's slight variances that'll happen from what this approximate number is. But we went through and placed everybody on a new step and grade with what would be the new cost. And that was based on the recommendation of the Finance Committee of the 3% steps and the 4% COLA, that would come at an approximate cost of just under $150,000. However, that doesn't include some contract employees that are in the process of negotiations with their contracts. So I would estimate that you could be looking at anywhere from 25 to 40,000. I have no idea. We haven't earmarked those numbers yet. That's ongoing process, so it's hard to say where that's going to come in. But previously, we had worked into FY24 approximately $40,000, and that was based on the old step increase of 2%. Is that number approximate? I mean, it could be 38, it could be 42. I'm not exactly sure what, but it's roughly $40,000. And then at the annual, it was increased an additional 120. So it gives us a window of about $160,000. And so if we're estimating that the 40,000 that was previously allocated could be taken up between the contract employees and any shifts for promotions we've made that, weren't reflected in this, or, any grade changes that were made that aren't reflected in these tables, you're looking at a cost approximately about $190,000 to do that, which leaves you about $30,000 short. I have concerns with moving forward with a table that we don't have the capacity for funding. And so after reviewing it a couple more times over the weekend, last night I was looking at different tables, different options, using the exact same table. And one of the things that I really liked was the 3% steps in between. I won't forget about you. One of the things I really thought was imperative was, 1, the 10 steps, 2, the 3%, because the step increases are guaranteed increases that should any future select board decide they want to do no COLAs, they're just status quo, we're not doing it, you're at least guaranteed the 3%, which I thought was important. It also matches some other contracts that we have here in town, and it sort of unifies those step increases along all tables. So keeping that in mind, I just kept using different percentages to show where we could stay within approximately the $120,000 that was appropriated at annual town meeting. And in doing so, it lands on changing the steps to a 3% difference in between each step and a 2% COLA. Now I want to clarify, when somebody hears, oh, it's only a 2% or it's a 4%, when you do the calculations out based on the super step jumps that we did, the double step jumps, and the COLAs, the one that the Finance Committee recommended gives an average employee, and these vary, because this is just an average between all 31 employees that we looked at, approximately just over 11% increase from 23 to 24. But it comes with us having to find another $30,000. The one I'm proposing at a 3% step change to the table with a 2% COLA sees the average employee get about 9%. And so many times I've heard, Dan and several people say, when they talk about inflation was anywhere from sometimes 7%, 11%. I could look it up what it is today. But we heard, the 8 or 9%. In that model that I'm talking about, the cost of using the table that way is just under $123,000. So we would only be looking to find within the FY24 budget a roughly $3,000 deficit to fund that. And paycheck to paycheck, each employee would see the coverage of the increase to the cost that we saw for around the country. And so each employee sees approximately 9%. And that's partly because we restructured the placement of each person. We have many staff members that fall in the first 6 steps. There's only a handful of people that are in the upper half of the table. Most are early on in the career or early on in the step and grade, the way it was set up. So you have the one that the Finance Committee looked at. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to do that before they met. They were meeting simultaneously while we were meeting, so they haven't had a chance to hear that until just this very moment. So,
Scott, can you explain your numbers a little bit more? Because you're saying with what the Finance Committee proposed, we would need to find almost $60,000, but
30,000.
30,000, okay.
Yeah, 30,000.
And where exactly are you getting the 11 and the 9% from? Like, where are you drawing, what is that?
So that
Where's
is
that coming from?
so that is taking the tables that Ms. Icorn had done for us,
Yep.
which are not part of that packet. They were just work process. Taking the year-over-year increase and looking at what that year-over-year increase is for each employee, and then averaging that percentage.
Okay.
So if you look on the, if you have your email, you can look at that table, the impact table, and it's on there. My fear is, I mean, I like the 3% steps and the 4% COLA. Don't get me wrong, more money is more money. My fear is that we would be approving something that we have yet crafted the capacity for. And so if somebody has a line item or they feel strongly that there's somewhere that that money is earmarked from, love to hear about it, but we crafted a very tight, used every line item that was possible on FY24 due to the way it played out on town floor. And so without already having the process or the conversation about a 2.5, you'd have to look within the current appropriations. I know there's discussion about moving forward with a conversation of 2.5, but to hinge compensation on that, I'm not in favor of that. I'd like to clean up the wages, clean up the compensation, and move forward.
Did forget about it.
It's his job to call on you, but go ahead.
He's right. He's right.
I'm not
and
supposed to
over here
acknowledge people.
Contemplating. No, yeah, no, he's right. Yeah, please.
I just wanted to clarify that it's $40,000 in the line for wages, and we jumped it by 120, not moved it from 40,000 to 120?
So there's 120 in the special article for wages, for increases, and then in the budget was already the step change that everyone was eligible for.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, so it is
a 2% step was built into the budget because
Right.
everyone would have had that who was eligible, and that's about 40.
Okay.
Right. Yeah,
If
there's
we're
no,
including that step in this analysis, now we can combine that and say we have 160 total between, because all of the actions in the outcome of this, because we're combining it.
right.
Okay. Thank you.
And how much, Scott, do you think you guys need for the contract, the 4 contracted employees?
Unknown. Those are ongoing negotiations, so it's we can't discuss how those are going. We haven't even met with the final presentation yet with those parties. So it's, looking at these, you see people getting annual increases ranging or averaging $3,000 to $5,000. So those are not your higher contracted employees that hold those higher grade and steps. So I would have to err on the side of, if we're using the same model, in approaching those types, it would probably be a little bit higher for those, just by nature of being higher on the grade system. So, you know, I don't know, earmark 7,000, you know, it'd be an arbitrary number to throw one out. I would estimate anywhere from $30,000 to $40,000. And it's not just those 4 people. There's also, while we may have used some all employees to come up with rough estimates, the actual tables that belong to unions or soon to be formed unions, those have to be negotiated.
So effectively, those are not part of this. The budget we have for 160 is only for eligible employees, and the tables are only for eligible employees. So what happens in a CBA and what happens with contract employees is not part of this discussion. And so it's also not part of the amount of money because it is not money that we can talk about in that context. I understand what you're
Correct.
saying.
I would
but that's
disagree,
a separate
though.
issue that we have
So-
to deal with outside of this table.
Correct, but if you don't earmark funds for that, then
It's a
you,
discussion for outside this table because I cannot estimate and we cannot discuss what may or may not be that compromises our bargaining position. So if we have the budget for the employees that are eligible for the table, I understand your point, but that's not a discussion we can have here. So not any further than we already have. I have to draw the line on that. I mean, I don't know. I don't know of any other way we can discuss what you're trying to get at any further than
Well,
we already have
so
properly.
the only other
here.
way to do it is just create an arbitrary number and call it base wage adjustment increases and leave it there, right? So you don't have the, I understand what
Isn't
you're.
that what the 160 is?
No, it's 120, but what I'm saying is I'm using calculations to find out if we're within capacity. If you're saying we're within capacity, but we can't use those other people that have not yet been negotiated, then you're using up all capacity, and then you show up at the table and you say, we don't have the capacity. And then you're bargaining not in good faith. So, I know,
would
I hear what
say-
you're saying.
I would say, if you're saying that we have not agreed to contracts and agreements, that we did not already have exactly all the funding sorted out, it's unrealistic. Or we didn't expect to make adjustments within a budget to accommodate it that already existed, even if that wasn't the original plan. We've done it. We've agreed to those, knowing that that capacity had to come from somewhere else within a budget that we didn't originally plan it at planning time. So, Brian, I mean, feel free to weigh in if you see it differently or some other way to get at that. But that's there are limitations to what we can do here in those areas. And those agreements, in some cases, are not up, so they're not, that any of those discussions are openings that we would have to be willing to do, and I know historically we have been. I'm not saying we are or aren't, but that's something that has to happen outside of here.
I can't speak to the things you're talking about. I don't know anything about them, and nor should I. But in our discussions as finance, and as Scott mentioned, I've previously mentioned, the state's getting 4% and 4% at different times, moving along, roughly 8. Federal thing, Social Security gets roughly 8. And we would not want to see our employees look at things and say, gee, I went backwards. I've lost buying capacity. And that's the information we had when we voted for what we recommended. If in fact Scott's numbers are correct, and I have no reason to believe why Scott would mislead us, it gets the average people to around 9%. That's roughly what I was looking for, whether it's the scenario we approved or Scott's scenario. It gets the result that I was looking for gets us there. So I'd be inclined to support that. I don't know what anybody else thinks. We got the 3% in between steps, and we got the reduction of between 15 to 10 steps. And the result of percentage for people will be 8% or better or so. I'd be satisfied with that from a financial point of view.
I would as well.
I agree with you as well.
Before you guys take any votes, that table that was done to move from 15 to 10 steps. Anyone, if I'm following effectively, everyone should get at least 2-3% steps.
Correct.
Is the idea,
That's
because
the-
everyone's
that's
going to
the
jump at
minimum.
least 2.
Unless you're already
Unless
on
you're
step
under
14
under
or
a
15.
4, or you're over a 14.
Yeah, 14
Right?
or over, you only get the 1 or none. 1 through 4, you're getting minimum 2.
2-3% steps.
Correct.
Except 4 and 5 are not, because you didn't calculate the starting rate at 6% higher than it used to be on 4. It's
4
starting,
goes to a step 6, so they still
but
see
step
it.
6 is only 4% higher than it used to be.
No.
In the table it is. Because it wasn't calculated based on step 4 going up.
Right,
6%.
but if you, but 4, so 4 going to a 6,
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you right now,
I mean, maybe I'm wrong.
I
but-
have the numbers. I'm looking at 4s right now, and they all see a 6.14, 6.16, 6.11, and these are all different grades. Anybody in 4, 6.11, so they're seeing a 6% combined. Because we calculated out the 3% increase first, the 3% step in, excuse me, I calculated out the 2% increase to the table first, and then gave them a double jump after that. So they didn't move on the double jump first. There was an increase to it, and then they moved 2 steps.
I'm not sure I'm following you.
He's saying we adjust the table with a 3% in between steps first. So that adjustment gets done first, then we move employees around. So in theory, if someone was at a 1 and they're moving to a new step or an old step 6, they would be seeing that because we put that 3% in before we moved anybody around.
Right, and what I'm saying is, if, and I'm just going to use for ease, I'm going to take 4, grade A, step 4. It's 1624 currently. If you add 3% and 3% and 4%, that should be the lowest rate anyone gets, right?
If you're using no. So that table, let me see, make sure we're looking at the same table.
FY23 general government, step
Yeah, but
4, grade A.
we have multiple emails, so I want to make sure we're looking at the right
It's 1624.
general government.
Current, no increases, current general government today is 1624 on grade A, step 4.
1624.
Okay. If I go from 4 to 6 now, right, that's where I would be in theory in the new table. I should get a step for 3%, a step for 3%, and a COLA of 4%, right?
If you're using the 4% COLA.
Correct. That is not 1792. What I'm saying is
No, so not-
1792, which is the proposed 3 and 4 for an A1, which was a A6 before, is based on 2, 2, and 6.
So you're using the table in 23 to try and say I should be at least. And if you look at the comparisons here, a step 6, the new step 6 on the 3% increase in between steps and the 4% base wage, the new step 6 is 1757. So somebody that was a 4 last year, make sure we're looking at the right one, grade A.
I agree. Yeah,
1750.
1624 to 1757, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And currently, we don't have any A's on there, so I don't have one that was already calculated out, but
We can pick a different one if you want. I just picked the first one there just for ease.
Bs, we have a B, a B4. Old rate was 1867, correct?
Yes.
New increase is not 1943 for step 6 in FY24 with the, my 2% adjustment would be 1982.
Wait a minute. Now we're not on the 3, 4 anymore?
We can go to that one. I have that one here.
Okay, if we could.
Just different.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Twenty 20.
I got
20.
2060.
Well, no, what
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. No, we're looking at B. Where do you see 2060 for the new step 6?
You said a B4 was starting, old pay was 1867?
Correct. But the table, the
Oh.
table, proposed table is 2021, or
Right.
2020, 2021, whichever. But that, and what you just calculated is what my point is. Yep.
So your concern is that that adjustment is not
I can
enough?
tell you as the person who made the tables, I can tell you that that was not done with a 3%. That first starting row was just taken straight from line B6 on the old tables.
Right. My concern is that anyone that moves into 6 or 7, anyone who's in 4 or 5 today is only going to get, in terms of steps, a 4 or 5% increase. Everyone less than 4 and everyone more than at 6 or higher will get a 6% minimum for steps. The way this table is, because
You're talking, I disagree.
so if you take,
If you're on step 4
yep,
currently,
Yep.
that number was what, 18?
1867.
That's it. So 20, their new step would be a 6 on this table, correct? So it'd be 2021?
Correct.
2021 divided by 18.67 is an 8.2% increase for that
Right,
individual.
But that isn't my point. My point is that what everyone is receiving, in theory, in this model, the minimum that anyone who's not at 14 or higher should be receiving is 2-3% steps and a 4% COLA. That's the model, right? But everyone's getting at least that unless they're already at 14.
So I can tell you, to do what you're talking about is to modify the table first through all 15 steps.
Or from the step we're going to jump from, which is 4.
You can do it, if you can do it from 4.
Yeah.
I did it from 1 for comparison, and with no base wage adjustment, just 3% steps. Just doing it from 1 beyond, the compounding effect put it at like $165,000 of anticipated increase, as opposed to the model that we use, which was 149 and change. Because everything gets exponentially bigger. So
No, I understand that, but what
hear-
I'm saying is that they're not getting the same step difference that everybody else
I
is
can
getting
tell
at a
you that-
minimum, that's all.
Yeah, not everybody's getting that. And even in the proposal, any of the proposals, they range, there is no unilateral percentage increase because you're changing the table and you're changing the steps in between. There are some people on, even the recommended from the FinCom, you will see people with 11, 12, 13% increases.
Because it's compounding.
It's compounding.
But what I'm saying is the basis that is discussed here is not being applied to those moving from 4 or 5
Well,
because they are the same way it is for everyone else as a minimum,
in-
compounded or not.
in 5 they are, because 5 has the applied base wage adjustment and then a double step jump. So 5 is. So you're
5
saying
is only 2 and 3 and 4 is what I'm saying.
Steps
Right.
1 through 4, 5 does, 5 moves to
Five
step
does
7.
get what you're talking about, because it's,
No, because 6 to 7 is a 3%. But when you, in the new table, when you generate it, when 6 was generated, it was based on where 6 was,
Correct.
which was based on a table of 2% steps. If someone's in 5, when they go to the 6, what was 6 first, they only get 2%. Then they get 3 when they go to 7, what was 7. And so what I'm saying is 4 only gets a +2 +2 +4.
correct.
5 only gets a +2 +3 +4.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody else gets at least a +3 +3 +4 unless they're at 14. Compounded or not, that compounding is the nature of a table. The step changes are different only for those people. And I don't think that that's fair. Whatever percentages we use between them and everything, I just think that that should be the same. Which would mean we'd have to calculate what historic step 4 +3 +3 as the base of the table. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Sure. I
Okay.
can
I
do
know
it.
it's going to move it up, but
Yep.
I just,
I mean, if you want that number, I can give it to you. It'll just take me a minute. You can continue
I'm
discussion.
bringing it up for conversation. If no one thinks that that's, I know we're doing a lot of different things, and so I'm not saying it has to. I just think to me, it's more consistent.
I have difficulty on following everything sometimes.
A visual would probably help, and
but-
I don't know how to do that right now.
But setting the numbers aside, it's just my opinion, having everyone have a same fair percentage along, not with a couple of people on a couple of steps getting less than somebody else. Having it consistent seems like a good idea. How you arrive at that through the numbers, I'm not sure. But I appreciate you bringing it up, so we don't end up with some people saying, hey, how come they got this and I didn't?
Appreciate that.
So I mean, to your point though, Dan, anytime you change the table, especially the steps, and I hear what Jake's saying, but even in doing that, it won't equalize every person because there is a compounding. So anybody in 6 or higher currently will see a higher increase than the newer people.
I don't
And
think
that-
it's the compounding that we're worried about.
No,
It's
I know,
that
I'm just getting to
everyone is
Dan's-
starting
yeah.
at the same spot.
And everyone will get the same compounding if it's
Eventually.
consistent. Eventually, right, when they get to that step,
when they get to that step.
right?
Yeah.
And all I'm saying is that those moving in our shift here in deciding that this is where the new basis should be are the only ones not seeing kind of that initial 3%. Everyone above 6, above, what would be 3 is seeing the 3% compounded, right? That's all. And I do know, I do follow, and it will affect every single person because we're going to reset the start. Which means every single step will increase. Slightly.
Even though we strive for perfection, we don't always get
They
there.
were perfect.
We just do the best we can.
Do you want me to calculate that? I don't want to do the process of doing it if people aren't interested in hearing it. If you want me to, I can do it. I have both screens pulled up right now. I can go through, and it's a matter of changing the starting number to give it the.
I think it's worth looking at.
Yeah, okay. Excuse me.
So I am
Take 5 minutes,
actually,
so-
yeah. In looking at the table you sent though, Deb, I didn't catch this the last time until just now. Oh no, it's a solid number. Okay, never mind. I'm not going to make the comment I made because it's irrelevant. don't know if you want to do a recess if you have nothing else to talk
Yeah,
about.
I mean, we could, but I don't want to have a discussion that you're not part of, so unless there's something else on this, I mean, we'll take 5. Anybody wants to step away, I mean, we'll be sitting here calculating. I'm going to do the same, just so we have comparison to
Yep.
something similar, and go from there. But people are welcome to do as they wish.
You're not recusing, you're not recessing, you're just settling.
People can step away if they wish, whatever. I'm not going to take a formal recess, but we're just going to be calculating for 5 minutes. Thank you.
So just on the very first one that I just did, if you take step 4 and use that as your new baseline, and you add a 4% base wage adjustment to that,
And a 3 and 3. Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead. Add 4, yep.
so you can't, the whole point was you're moving a double step, so you don't have to add the 3 and 3. You're just moving them to a new wage, so you add the 4%, so they might only get the 4. If you're saying.
Based on what was proposed in terms of a double step, everyone's getting at least 2 steps at 3%. Or more, except those in 4 and 5, currently. Because someone who's in 3 is getting 3 and 3 because the table used to be 2 and they're moving 3 steps technically. And someone who's in 2 is getting 8, and someone who's in 1 is getting 10, based on that old table. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
No, I get you.
So what I'm saying is for just reference, what I'm saying is the starting point on a B1 in the new table would be 2061, which I think is what you said a minute ago, right? So that anyone moving into a 6 is getting at least 6% in steps and a 4% COLA in this model. Or higher.
And so are you looking for, first of all, we haven't actually recessed, correct?
Correct.
I didn't remember voting on one, so I just want to make sure. I don't want to start talking if we're in recess. Are you looking for that to be carried out to the projection of an estimated cost? Or just what
I
the
mean,
table looks like?
I mean, I think we want to get a sense of the cost,
That's what I-
right?
that's what I
Yeah,
figured,
which is
yeah.
what I thought you were
Yeah.
heading toward.
Well,
Maybe not, but I thought so.
I was heading there. I just wanted to
Okay.
make sure that
Yep.
we're on the same page and I'm not doing something that isn't asked.
Understood.
So for those at home, bear with us.
I mean, if anyone would like us to formally recess for 5 or 10, we can, but it's,
It might be better than just dead silence, but that's.
do you- I'll move recess until 9 PM.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We'll be back in 15. All right, you call back to order at 9:07 PM. So, you did the overall running of the 4-3 with the adjustment to where we start, basically.
Yeah, just so for people that are watching at home and those in the audience that want to try and follow what we just did, instead of using the old step 6 with a base wage adjustment, we use the old step 4 to ensure that they're getting the 2-step jump, which is what Chairman Smith was talking about, and recalculating the tables using that formula, and then inputting that into the estimation tool that we have. It looks like the cost for those employees that are on there is estimated about $179,232, substantially higher.
It's in 232.
And 4 cents.
And I got
And 4 cents.
179.8 and change. I'm not going to go there.
Yeah.
It's in the 180
Right.
versus the 150.
Correct.
That's
About 30,000 more. So that would put your deficit, based on what we already have calculated, available, 60,000. I'm adding in the,
yeah, but
40.
but from our 160, it's 20. From the 160 that we have in the budget right now, it's over 20. It's 20 over that, effectively.
correct.
I mean, I'll say it. I would say I think that the capacity is there in the budget to find that and just to do it. That's my opinion. Because I know we all budget the best we can, and we have shrunk the budget next year and operating as much as we could, as much as department heads could. We also know normally there is some flex in there, generally as it is, and so from an overall budget standpoint, I think the capacity is there for 20 more. But that's my opinion, that we can balance it with what we have. I welcome other opinions, or that's just me, or thoughts, where we are. Or Brian, I mean, from your assessment, if that's an incorrect statement, you think generally that we can probably balance, even though there's that?
Yes.
Okay.
For me personally, I know when we talked at our finance committee meeting, it was very rough numbers of total estimate.
Sure.
And that was, if I remember correctly, I think it was about 140,000 for the rough estimate when we were looking at it. So 40,000 more than that seems a lot.
Well, what you recommended was 150. The
Oh, it was-
estimated.
okay, it
See,
was 150, okay.
yeah, I mean,
I
maybe
thought
it was 140 then,
but
but the
I know it
accurate
was rough
number
at
is
the
about
time, but-
150. Yeah. So 150 to 180 is basically what the difference there is. And I feel strongly about making sure that the adjustment hits those steps the same way, whether that means we don't do 3% between steps and instead do something different. I mean, I understand. I feel strongly that someone in 4 and 5 today getting something different than basically the rest of the table at a minimum doesn't feel right for me. That's all. And trying to recalculate the impact of the different steps, we could do that for a future meeting, but coming up with some general ballpark, we probably can, if that's the direction we want to go. And I hear you, it's a lot, but I also feel like, we've talked about it before, there's been some discrepancy between kind of the general way we've approached it on the rest of the employees and the way the school has, and they've had 3 and 3 for years and years. And so I can't make up for the past, but I feel like we should, part of this is to try to kind of get somewhere that we feel is more market competitive, and
So,
I get where we've been, so.
to that point, 3 years ago, when you restructured the table, you took out the historical anomalies because you adjusted things up, and there was a substantial increase to the wage tables at that time. That's how
No,
you
we set a baseline and tried to make sure that they were all equitable grades and such.
right. So
I don't know that we moved it in a way to be competitive with other
Well,
departments, so.
when we looked at the competitive to the county, there was only a couple of red flags. Everything else, I'd say, we're in the top 10% of the county. So we are competitive. So those changes you did sort of wiped out the anomaly of not being competitive, and kept us competitive. So I hear what you're saying, but it doesn't follow the recommendation was that we, A, keep a competitive starting wage, and B, it's in the top, say 10%. We want to be equitable throughout the county so that people want to come here and stay here. But this adjustment, I think, is going to far exceed that. And if people want that, that's great. It's just it's a large jump. You're talking anywhere from just under 10% to just under 19%. Some people will see. And that's not looking at the wage study saying, are those positions, is that an appropriate? See what I'm saying? Like,
Well, we're under the basis that the grades are appropriate. So if we adjust all the steps equally, then we should just be shifting the table, not changing the equity of the grades, right? Because we're not proposing any
Yep.
changes to grade specific. We're just shifting the entire base.
Right.
And we're saying we want less steps and we want them to start higher.
fair enough.
And that's just my take on that. I think the all-in average impact looks like about 13%.
Yeah,
There's some high and there's some low. I think the
13.29.
minimum's around 10.
Yep. That's- I have
Net
the same- I have
effect.
the same
Net
average
effect,
and
yeah,
same everything,
okay.
yep. And you're going to get that when you do a step change.
Yeah,
Because
of the compounding.
You're going to get that.
Right.
So anybody beyond,
Hopefully everyone stays and gets that final one,
Yeah.
that highest one in the
but
end, right?
anybody beyond a current step 6 now sees, and beyond, sees the exponential. They get the benefit of the exponential in 1 year, as opposed to those that are restarting at,
Yeah, because we're
They'll have to-
basically,
they'll-
we're
they'll see
basically
it, they'll
reapplying the 1% they didn't get all the way to where they
Correct.
are, as opposed
Yeah.
to, just shifting it. I mean,
yeah.
welcome other thoughts of where we want to land on this. I mean, I'd
We-
like to come out tonight if we can with at least, maybe we need to tweak what the totals are to understand the impact a little more accurately, with the accountant treasurer. We're expecting to do unless something, gross outlier in the way the math was done and the total impact, to review at the next meeting. Does that make sense? But whether that's 4 and 3 or 4 and 2.5, whatever that is, I'd like to try to leave here with a decision on a consensus on that's what we believe we're going to do unless the math comes back grossly different, right? We've already run these. We've had the treasurer help run them, right?
Yep.
So
Yeah, this
I
this
think-
formula to run them all came from the treasurer to be able to input the numbers.
So that was for the impact. I did a lot of the formulas on the scales themselves. So I would ask, just to be safe, because I would hate to have made a mistake and then find out down the road that it was a catastrophic mistake, that if we could give clear instructions as to what we're looking for to Brian and Jennifer, and ask them to take this one table and recreate that one table for us, just to have someone else who has not been as involved in the scale itself process to run all those numbers for us and just double check and make sure that there are no giant, it should be a 2.5 and it's a 2 point whatever type error that could have a substantial impact.
And that's kind of what I agree. That's what I'd like to do is come out with, this is what we want the new table to look like based on these factors, which, whether it's 4 and 3, whatever that is, and starting at this and starting the calculations from here, if we assume the impact is this and we're comfortable with that, then unless something is grossly different once the numbers are run a couple more times, that's where we are. I mean, if the numbers come back and it's $400,000 impact, then we're going to be talking on the 26th and going, that's not going to work. But, generally don't think that's where we are. Don't think there's that, much of an error in any of this data. A lot of people have looked at it now on the team who, do this every day. So it would be more of a, we're pretty confident that this is it, unless there's something we missed.
Well, we liked 4 and 3.
Yep.
But I would really like to see what the final impact of 4 and 3 is.
Should be about
And when-
180.
And when Scott said that,
It's estimated about 180. I actually look at your tables. I think Jen and Brian will end up, I think your
Okay.
tables look good. I
Yeah.
don't think they'll find the anomalies.
And him and I ran the calculation separately, did all of that separately. We came in within a few $100s of each other, which is based on just the rounding.
and is 4 and 3 giving everybody roughly a 12% raise, or we were talking about an 8% before?
So because the table's compounding, right? Every step they go up, it's going to compound another percent on top of that 3%. The lowest is 10. The lowest employee will be the lowest change, dollar for dollar is about a 10%. Maybe it's 9.51, but it's rounding to 10. I didn't go out another decimal. I think the average impact for the whole of it is about 13% on average, all in, because of the compounding.
what
But
were you talking
3 and
about
3
numbers?
and 4 is 10%.
Yeah, and what
So-
were you talking about for numbers that brought it to 8% instead of 12?
Well, that was
3 and
using,
3?
so that was using we'd have to redo the same calculation using a different starting point. So that 20 minutes we took to redo it, we'd need another 20 minutes. And I'm not sure we need to, so it'll be,
You could probably shift it by similar amounts, I think. It's not going to be perfect, but it's probably plus or minus 5,000.
I think
I
the
think
question
that-
is what the numbers were. So it was a 3% base, 3% in between the steps and a 2% base wage adjustment.
which got it, but it was a different starting point. So I think if we made that change, instead of the 122 or so for the final impact, I think it's probably fair to say that it's like 145.
Yeah, I mean, that would have been about 28 less. So it's probably
Yeah.
28 less than 180. So, yeah, 152 probably.
Yeah, okay.
So
So,
I'd say the delta between the tables is probably pretty close, even though we shifted where it starts.
yeah, I think that's
overall
accurate.
it'll be plus minus,
So using the formula that I had proposed, which would have been the 3% steps, and readjusting the table for the new starting formula of the old step 4, yeah, 150,000, 152, somewhere in that ballpark.
Which for me, that aligns with the impact a little better from what we were thinking it was before,
Yeah, I agree.
personally.
Yep.
And I do like the 8%.
I mean-
I think it's a good number instead of almost 13 or around that.
So that might drop the average of 13% or so down to maybe 10 and a half, 11-ish.
Yeah, we'd have to run,
Well,
I'd have to run the numbers.
yeah, but just in general.
Probably, right around
figure
there.
it should take at least 2%
2%,
off, right?
yeah.
I mean, it's not exactly that, but
It's in the ballpark.
Well, I mean, I've always been harping about, we want to be fair to the employees, but we want to be fair to the taxpayers too. They're paying the bill. And seems like closer to 10, 11% average is more than, some of them went up as high as 19, seems a bit excessive.
It does,
On
yeah.
one way of looking at it. Especially when it's the people who are already near the top of the scale will be making the 19.
but that's the point of the table. So if that's not what we want to do, then our tables aren't built right.
No, it's just.
So I
it is what it is.
I disagree with you on that point, that
Okay.
the idea is that that's what happens when you go up through a table, because it compounds. If that's not what we want to do, then our table design isn't right for us.
Well,
So
we're not gonna-
I want to, my outlook, and I'm, no offense, I don't mean to cut you off, but my outlook is, what is the lowest impact? Because that's the starting point. And are they getting what we want? And if it's 3, 3, and 4, it's 10%. Are they getting 10%? Then what anyone above that is getting is relative to their time, their compounding, their, investment here, hopefully. It's relative. So, and I respectfully know that you are, everyone get $1, and I'm often more of a, everyone get 1%, so.
That's okay.
And the net impacts are the opposite, so
Okay.
I get where you're at.
I guess for me, I'm happy if the lowest is getting 8%.
I'm not inclined to change my stance.
On 3,
On
4,
3 and
3,
4.
3, 4, yeah.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what you
Would you
said.
say
I
3
would
and
stick
4?
with what we originally proposed. I would want to see all the new numbers
At,
first.
at the new values, but 3 and 4 as the principal. Basically the 180, where it's 3 and 4 and a basically minimum of 10.
So my stance on it was that the base wage adjustment, when you're changing the steps and changing the table format, the base wage adjustment percentage becomes arbitrary in the sense that while it's optics, they gave a 4%. They gave a 4% COLA, so 4% base wage. But when you change the table, you're automatically, we're incorporating in more than that with the step adjustments. So if to me, it's looking at what was the goal. The goal was to ensure that, inflation, starting wages, and retention. And I honestly think that with the adjustment to the starting step of the base wage and the double step increase from 4, not 6, that we corrected, I think the 3% steps is a mandatory. I think it makes sense, and a 2% COLA. Those adjusted gives everybody around a 10% or more. We have to run the numbers. but-
8 or more.
8 or more, sorry, yeah. Which is what the goal was, the FinCom had mentioned, Dan had mentioned many times, just to be competitive with what the market was putting as a burden on individuals in their pocket.
Like 8%.
Yeah.
And may I- are
Yeah,
you done? I don't-
absolutely,
okay.
yeah.
I agree, and everyone would have gotten 2% anyway because they earned the step. So to me, that gets you to 10, and so that's where kind of 3 and 4 makes sense to me because it gets you to 10, because everyone was earning 2% on the old system no matter what. That was their step, and they've earned it by being here and doing the job for the last year. So
Can we just see the
Whole-
2 tables with the
what
3
is
and
the
2 and the 3 and 4? And just look at those for the next time we meet and decide on those? We're down to 2, right?
Sure, we can. I would just ask what's the purpose to see what those numbers actually are, or what the impacts are, or what? I'm just curious.
I'd like to see the impact.
I mean, it's
After the annual town meeting, I'd like to see the impact.
no, that's fair. That's fair. I think it's pretty confidently somewhere around 150, 145 to 155 versus 180-ish. So, but I mean, we can have them run, sure.
I'm with you, I would like to see them both side by side.
We can do that. Is that? I mean, the only other option is that everyone weighs on which one they want, and then we have an odd number right now. So I don't have. I'm not saying we can't come back on the 26th and we can do something retro, but I would also like to be able to put it in place. And there's no way if we do it on the 26th that we can expect our financial team to be able to implement it in 4 days.
I hear that, but I also don't think it's something that should be rushed. And I'm going to be honest,
Absolutely.
I feel like right now we're at an impasse, and we've come as far as we can come, and we're just kind of beating a dead horse at this point. So I think
Okay.
could we ask for the tables to be done and then maybe move on to the FY24 budget?
So for definition, so let me just, we're gonna add a 2% COLA. This is one scenario, right, is a 2% COLA. The other scenario is a 4% COLA.
Yep.
The rest of the table changes will be the same for both. It'll be 3% between steps, and we're gonna remove the first 5, and what is the new step 1 will be based on taking the old step 4 and adding 2 3% steps to it. So the old step 4
the old
plus 3
step-
plus 3 is the new step 1.
That's not how we calculated the 4%. It's a 4%, and so if you did the 2, you have to do the old step 4 plus a 2% increase plus a 3% and a 3%.
Right, and I said the 2 tables, the difference is a 4 or a 2.
Yeah.
But the step changes will start
3
from
and
number
3.
4 with 3 and 3.
Can you just give me grade A, the new step 1 in each of those tables?
I've got general government step grade 1A at 1792.
1792?
Would you concur?
Yeah, when I get there.
That's totally
Yep.
fine. Okay. And then I would have it with a 2% at, at 1757, really? Yeah. Does that sound right?
So the first one was the 4.
The 4, yep, sorry. I believe that's correct.
Yes, that is correct.
Because, that's right, because
2,
it's
3, and
2% difference between what we
Yep.
had calculated and what we were proposing it. Okay. So 1757 is the 2%,
1757
and 1792
was the 4. Okay.
was the 4.
And
And then
Perfect.
3% from there, and that's,
Yep.
you'll
We're
be
good.
able to get there.
that's all I needed.
Okay. And then we're looking for the 2 tables fully
Yep.
vetted at 10 steps,
Yep.
and then the impacts of each.
Right.
Yes?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll have them for all of you.
Interestingly, the 2% is what we had to
Correct.
start, that you guys looked at.
Correct. That's why I was going back to that one. Because we
So the
came
one we
in,
just did tonight is
Correct.
4, and the one that you brought was.
It's the exact
originally was
same-
actually 2.
it was actually 2.
Interesting. Anyway, so
And that's why I said.
150, 180.
And that's why I say it's semantics when you start talking about what the COLA is or the base wage adjustment, because we called it a 2, but it aligns exactly with what the recommended dollar amount was. So,
We'll still have it vetted.
yep.
We'll meet on 26th and hope to finalize it then.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything else on wage? Plenty for tonight. Okay. FY '24 comprehensive review. I know we all probably don't have a lot left for tonight in doing this, and you're rejoining, correct? Yeah, I'm rejoining. Okay. Thank you. But, you know, everyone had a little bit to think about this since our last meeting, and the kind of starting, how we want to approach it, kind of any of that. Anything where we want to start or have a little more discussion tonight?
So since you all, you had asked for the list of reductions that had occurred back in March when you were working on the budget. And there were a few additional changes. The OPEB amount had changed after that memorandum was sent. And then you restored, or you altered the proposed reduction on police training. So you restored some funding to that line item. So hopefully that gives you at least the start of what considerations you want to focus on.
I remember reading that email. Do you remember when you sent it so I can pull it back up?
Yep.
Saturday, June 10th at
Thank you.
1:37.
I got all the way down to June 11th. I was almost there. Thank you. But for the sake of discussion, I'm just wondering, are any of those reductions some that we feel is imperative that are restored for FY '24? Or is it more, because I'm still in favor of the big picture, looking at, if we're going to look at restructuring the baseline with a Prop 2.5 overall, so that we have viability and longevity, are any of those so imperative that we have to make an adjustment for FY '24? Could they all be part of that larger conversation of the Finance Committee, Select Board, and School Committee sitting down and looking at the, longevity of the budget in the next 5 years?
Which would be more of an FY '25 override?
Yeah. That's my thought of, really sitting down, and having, our due diligence, working with all of our department heads for '25 and beyond. Are we sustainable to get that done or not? And I don't know if any of those are so imperative that we must for FY '24. I guess I'm asking. Does anybody look at those?
I guess I would ask the department heads.
Yeah.
I think, for me, the one that some of these drew a lot of discussion and some didn't, if I recall. And I think the cadet program and the academy
Yep.
for the police department
Yep.
definitely drew some. And some concern about just what it takes to potentially hire someone, and the pool getting smaller and all of that these days. So that to me sounds more of a time issue, where I don't know that we'd want to wait another year plus to get that off the ground. And highway roadwork improvements, I don't know. I don't know, because is that going to be, and he just went back to his vacation, thankfully, so he's not here to ask, but is that, and I don't recall if we discussed this, is that more of capital road investments, at which point would just need to plan capacity in the future year, in FY '25 or beyond, or is that more of maintenance things that we didn't have capacity to do? Actually, is there a footnote there? Yeah, because that was a recurring special article, which is some mix between capital and not, right?
Right.
Kind of. So maybe more detail for me on what was that going to do specifically in FY '24, if anything, that we may not want to wait another year on? Or was it more of just going back to building capacity for road projects and road work needed? Which maybe is more of a capital conversation about how do we do that in the future. Wastewater capital improvement was actually an operating budget item. It was not a capital item.
Correct.
It was an operating budget for equipment and whatever.
That's correct.
Only because some of those failures are costly. I don't know if that makes sense to not have. We've had that budget be pretty tight a few years. So that'd be the other one that kind of caught my eye. The surveying services, I believe, was more about road layouts and getting all that stuff more in order, which we just kind of talked about
Right.
in the last meeting.
We either do them as part of a project or you've used your consulting line for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you would like to see something, and I'm in agreement on several of those points, that, maybe we should be looking at a multi-step, like I talked about the last time, is maybe there's something small that we're looking at to ensure that we have the operational needs met, the level of services met for FY '24, but then we have a larger conversation about viability 25 and beyond. So maybe there is two coming. I just don't think we have unless you're looking to slow it down a little bit. I know you talked about a 90-day window to try and make that happen. I'm not sure you can have I have reservation about that timeline to do a comprehensive long-range plan in 90 days and feel that we get the outcome, the resident input and backing and understanding in 90 days or less. So,
Understood.
yeah, that's my only concern is the timing of it. And that's why I would lean towards pulling out those items that you think are vital, that I agree, some of the, especially the cadet program and other cuts that we made, reinstituting those and going back to the voters and saying, we had to pull from somewhere to balance it that day, and we're looking at upping the 2024 to accommodate these couple of cuts that were made short term.
My opinion is there are a number of these smaller things that people cut because they felt they had to, because we're trying to reach a balanced budget, but they really need these things, and it'd be good. Sort of like if you don't maintain your buildings, eventually they fall apart. So you're saving money, but then you got to fix the whole thing. It's not just a comparison, but not a particular building I'm talking about. I agree on the police. You can't have two cops trying to fill the whole thing because everybody else leaves. You need to have a plan and work on that, and fixing the roads and a number of these things. I certainly agree with asking department heads, we know you cut because you kind of had to do something, but which things you really need to have, and have, so you call it a short-term thing, and then a longer-term thing of, how are we going to make up the 300,000 we took out of free cash? How are we going to make that up for next year or the year after, or years to come? And I think we cut a chunk out of the OPEB for the retirement thing, as I recall. And I don't know that we put much of anything into stabilization, which we usually do. And if you just let it go without discussion, you'll never get anything in there. And while it sounds great, like, oh yeah, we got millions of dollars in stabilization, well, we're fortunate that we do, because when something really hits the fan, you may need more than that. And it's a big number. So, certainly in my household, I don't have $10 million. But, the longer discussion needs to take place. I certainly agree with that. But for many of these short-term things, I'm hoping taxpayers would agree, we really need these things. And school's important, the kids are important, but these other things are too. And I'd hate for us to just forget it and say everybody else takes it in the neck. I don't think that's right.
I just want to say one quick comment. I don't want to say that 90 days is not plausible. I'd like to see if we move forward with the meeting with the department heads, asking those questions, looking at the whole bigger picture for the long range, and then check back in 30 days, see if we're able to actually come to, some realization of actual, long-range plans and numbers and programming and services, because we're not only asking them to look at capital, but we're asking them to relook at operating and all of that. Check in 30 days, so not our next meeting, but, meeting after that, and see if we're able to make some progress. If we're able to pull it together and then shortly thereafter, we've done ours with our department heads, asking the school committee simultaneously to be doing the same thing, taking a really good hard look at their budget, and crunching those numbers. I think it actually is overinflated what was done on the town floor that day. But looking at long range about sustainability, if we can get to that point, say in 30 to 45 days, 4 to 6 weeks, maybe the 90 days isn't out of reach. if we get to that point and we're like, nobody's even close, and we can't even sort of, we haven't wrapped our heads around it yet, and there's not even a proposal in front of us, then it's gonna be hard pressed to hit, a fall special that makes sense. So, but I'm gonna edge on optimism that if people are, gung ho about looking at that 25 and beyond, or not 24 and beyond, that there'll be some quick movement on that.
I may have lost a little of my optimism, so I'm glad you picked it up. So for the 26th, last department heads to look back through what the cuts were. What are things that you wouldn't give up? What are the impacts of those things? Which things are important? And it was a cost-cutting maneuver rather than just a harder look at the overall budget. Is that about the message? Get that input from them. And then also, I think each of us should look through that list and earmark any of the ones that draw concern for us, like I kind of brought up.
Yep.
And make sure we dive into those. If there's anything not on here, OPEB didn't get cut.
You didn't?
It got cut by 100,000.
Yeah.
It's not on the list, is it?
No, I put it in the body of the email that happened after this.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
I was just reading the list
We
again.
reduced it
Sorry.
from, what, 3 to 1?
You reduced it from 31.
Yeah,
so
we
it's
reduced it
essentially-
$200,000.
Whoa, okay.
Yeah.
That was bigger than I thought it was.
Yep.
Okay.
Can I take that one step further?
Yeah, I was going somewhere, but I lost the rest of it. Go right ahead.
Not just asking the department heads to look at what was cut, but if we're asking about a long-range plan, look at what they would foresee their operating budget needs to attain that in the next 5 years. There might be things that didn't even, like they were thought, there's no way I can throw this on there. I know we're in a budgetary constraint, so it's not going to show up as a cut, but it might have been something they were thinking, I really would like to do this, but I'm not even going to bother because I already know we're at $800,000. The writing was on the wall very early on. So if they weren't one of the first groupings to come see us, they probably already had modified what they were going to send in. So I would ask that they're looking at not just what they cut as their request, but what do they foresee as their service needs, and how do we build a budget to service that?
Cuts, level service for 5+ years.
Yeah.
And
And
services that they would think are beneficial or would like to offer and what that would cost that
Yeah.
we don't do today.
Correct. And the need,
Kind of
it's the
that
same thing.
three.
What's the need of that new service? What's the impact of that? What's the, so,
That's a lot.
yeah.
And I think that's true.
That's why I was saying
the
90
now is this list, I think. It's this, anything in FY24 that either didn't make the list or was cut that they think is important to maintaining service, right? The other stuff, if that has to come later and the more of the comprehensive, just to give it 2 buckets, because one may take a lot longer. And I do think the last part I was going to say is rationalizing this list. If we come up with a shorter list of things that we do think are FY24, maybe we can find creative ways to fund them in FY24 if we have a plan for how to fund everything in FY25 in a better way.
Okay.
Just a thought.
I just think we need to be mindful of how many times we go out to our residents and ask for an override, because we are going to burn them out. If we go back and we say, oh, we need 100,000 today, and then we've got the IP mill we gotta do, and then we go back again and say, now we need to do this one, I just think that is, as a resident, I'm gonna get frustrated. So I just think we need to be mindful in our approach that I would prefer to only see it happen twice, once for the budgetary override and once for the IP mill. And if that means that, unfortunately, the department heads work with a bit of a tight budget for maybe the first 3 or 4 months or 5 months or 6 months of FY24, then maybe that's what we have to ask them to do. But I do think going back to the residents over and over and over again is not going to be beneficial to our cause.
Agreed. I don't think we should go more than twice either. Hence why, if we can close out some, if there's other ways we could fund a few things if they're critical to do sooner and give us more time to not impact FY24 needs, but also do it better, I agree. Jackie?
I just want to caution you that If you wait 4 or 6 months, we can't set the tax rate until you do your 2.5 override.
Understood.
And then your taxes, and this is our first year preliminaries. So if you miss the December 31st deadline, taxes won't be due till May 1st, and just
Yep.
letting you know that will have some bearing.
And I think that's why you suggested the 90 days the first time, so that we can wrap this up. And
A variety of reasons, yes.
Yeah.
Tax rate, 9 months to do the things that that funding was
Right,
needed
yeah.
for, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. Yes, Brian, sorry. You had that up a minute ago.
No, it was important that you all finished. Sounds like you like guidance to go out to the department heads ASAP, so you can get responses for June 26th.
Please.
Could you appoint somebody, one of the members, to work with me to get the direction exactly the way you want it? Otherwise, I can draft it, but then you all need to look at it again.
Taking volunteers from anybody.
I'll take any volunteer, as long as I'm not the only set of eyes on it.
I don't know if either of you want to do it. I mean, finance, if anyone wanted it, it doesn't need to be the board per se. It could be either group. So many volunteers. You will? Oh, sweet.
Thank you.
Unless anybody's challenging you for it.
Okay.
Don't see that.
Oh, I felt
Everybody's
it,
like-
I felt the breeze as you guys all backed away.
They did, they all leaned back.
I was gonna start picking
Okay.
people.
Thank you.
I think everybody has a good sense of what we're trying to do, and it won't be perfect. It's going to take some steps.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
26. Resume the conversation. Do we want to include capital in that meeting just for the sake of capital being there, or are we going to focus more on 24 operating and wages and come back to the capital portion of 24 discussion?
Maybe put capital there in case something comes up, but they could always get emailed the day of saying they don't need to be there.
Yeah,
Just
well,
so
we
it's
can get you
posted
what
that
the
way
answers,
as
what
well.
what the responses are from department heads in the packet, and if there's capital items, then great, we'll put it on the agenda regardless, and then if
Right.
there aren't any capital items up for that night, we'll give them a break. Sound good?
Yep.
Okay. Any other joint business?
So I make a motion to join the joint meeting.
Go right ahead. Go right
Motion
ahead.
to adjourn the joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen,
I second that.
Continue the select board.
but continue the select board meeting.
I second that.
All in
All
favor?
Aye.
All those in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Brian, to
Yes, sir.
review conflict of interest policy draft, we don't have the first draft yet, right?
So let me tell you what this is. You have a copy-
If you don't have a draft, I don't care tonight.
You may just have a policy update to do on the conflict of interest. You have one in your personnel policy.
Right.
Yep.
The question is, does it fully check every box that the federal government would like to see for a grant source?
Got it.
And I'm getting
this is like
conflicting
grant.
feedback. It's
This
that
is because of
Yeah.
the federal grant money.
So
Yeah,
it's not that
okay.
you do not have
That's
one.
right.
I want everybody to know at home we comply with the conflict of interest law. That's not the concern. We're just making sure that all the language in the policy checks all the boxes for the federal government. And there was a question about whether or not we need to do a revision, and I'm going back and forth with them and council now.
Okay.
So it was a placeholder. I apologize.
Got it.
And basically, we say we follow what the state's law is, and they're saying that it doesn't say what you do. So we may have to reiterate the entire state law in our own
Got it.
policy, which I don't want to do, because if it changes, we have to change it.
Correct.
Right.
So that's,
Yes.
now you reminded me
Yeah.
on what that topic was.
Yes. I'll keep you all up to date.
Okay. And then circling back to
Appointment? No.
the HASCOM policy.
Yes.
What I conveyed was that having a list for each department was an OSHA requirement, as opposed
Yes.
to not what we wanted.
I
And
know.
then a follow-up question. One is, we'll come back, bring a draft back once the lists are complete, which is work in progress, right? Of
Yep.
appendix items?
Yep. Appendix A.
Appendix A, all of the items in the department buildings. And then, can we have a designee update a policy appendix without adopting it as the board? And then the footnote to that, if we can, then what is the notification requirements? Like, do we have to communicate it every time it's updated? You know, are they able to update the appendix if we haven't adopted the policy change, because it is a change?
So the policy is not changing. if you say that the information about the list of chemicals, which is what this table does, is stored in Appendix A, and you've designated a position to be authorized to make updates to that as necessary, you don't need to re-adopt the policy. With that being said, the policy at minimum should be reviewed once a year. So we did, there was a suggestion at the
Talked
last
about
meeting.
that,
Yeah, we talked
So we
about
put that in. We thought the safety committee made the best sense to vet proposed changes and bring it to the three of you if they recommended them. But from the list of chemicals, I mean, that could change. I mean, it does not change that often, but it could change daily.
Weekly.
Weekly.
So the
that would
appendix
make
can
sense.
change, we have an obligation to update employees,
Correct.
but it's not a policy change per se if it's referenced as a list, maintenance of a
Okay.
list.
That was my
Correct.
question.
And that was your question.
Is, modifying the appendix doesn't modify the policy. So
Correct.
therefore, we don't have to bring it forward for public review
Correct.
at a meeting. We can just do that, and then annually, the safety committee can look at that and say,
Correct.
it's up to date, it's good, or it's not up to date, and let's modify it.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Then I think
Yeah,
we're
that
just waiting
answers-
on the final draft with
Get
all the
that
lists,
finalized.
the
Yeah,
appendix
and
in full
naming-
before we adopt it,
and
and naming the
Who's holding the
safety,
burden of
Safety
the safety?
safety officer.
Still trying to figure that
Not
one out.
tonight, just,
Yeah, no,
we have the same pause.
just pointing out that those are the two pieces that we
Yep.
have left.
Okay, I will get working on that, and I've already started drafting out the duties of a health safety officer role. I don't have a recommendation, but I at least have the starts of, I think, an appropriate sized role. I mean, obviously, you can get very detailed very quickly, but I think I have the start of one for you.
Okay. Anything else?
Was it under a question about the assistant treasurer position?
I think it was just that we were going to carry it, and if there were questions, we
Right,
could
right,
send them
right,
out ahead of
right.
time
Using
to the
it,
treasurer,
Okay.
and then revisit
But no
next
questions
week. But
today?
there was no specifics
no.
to this time.
So we're carrying and revisit next meeting?
On the 26th.
Correct. And I can update you on the rest. I know you'll watch it, but
Yep,
any of those for carries and stuff.
thank you.
Anything otherwise? We did get through all agenda items.
I had nothing but faith.
Till that last one. Motion to adjourn, 9:54, 55?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.